Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Samantha Wolford. Samantha was born on August 28, 1989, in Texas, USA. She was the oldest of 3 siblings and always dreamed of becoming a famous actress, a big star. Although she was pampered and called a spoiled girl, her family still commented that she was full of energy. While in high school, Samantha fell in love with a boy, and they soon started dating. After graduating, she became pregnant and gave birth to twins. However, their relationship ended, leaving Samantha as a single mother of 2. She encountered financial difficulties and could not afford to take care of her children. Her dreams of fame faded. However, in 2007, she met a man named Ernest Lee, nicknamed Ernie. Since childhood, Ernie was a quiet, shy, and introverted boy, but also very intelligent. He was passionate about video games and computers, had a deep understanding of them. Reading was another passion of his, and his sister often called him a bookworm. His mother would sometimes scold him for staying up all night reading, which made him fall asleep during school lessons. After graduating from high school, he studied computer science and technology. After graduating, he started working at a factory that made baseball bats. His job is laser engraving baseball bats, and he always works hard. Samantha and Ernie met on Facebook and kept in touch for a long time before meeting in person. Around this time, she started actively uploading videos to YouTube. In one video titled "The Best Day of My Life," she shared the story of how she first met Ernie. She described how they laughed, joked, and had an amazing time together. She also confessed that before meeting Ernie, she was very nervous about meeting people online. She had always been wary of stories about girls who met strangers on the internet and ended up in dangerous situations. However, when she met Ernie, she immediately knew he was different and someone she could trust. Samantha said that when Ernie first came to her house, they were both shy and quiet, just smiling at each other. However, they quickly warmed up to each other, spending the day laughing and flirting. Shortly after meeting, Ernie expressed his admiration for Samantha, praising her for raising her 2 young children on her own since their father had abandoned them. He told her that he wanted to be a father to them, give them his last name, and build a family together. Samantha felt extremely happy about this. She appreciated the care and concern he showed her and the children, including financially. To her, Ernie was the man she had always wanted. With his support, Samantha could now focus on her lifelong dream of becoming famous. Samantha uploads more videos to YouTube, sharing stories about her life, her children, and other topics. At the time, YouTube was still new. The number of viewers and content creators was small. Therefore, her videos had almost no views or subscribers. However, she was still passionate about pursuing her dream. However, her mother said that this passion affected the family. For example, she often included family-related topics and rumors in her videos to attract views. She even shared photos and videos of family members without their permission. In 2011, after 4 years of marriage to Ernie, Samantha gave birth to twins Jarrett and Kelly. However, they began to struggle financially. With 4 children to care for, the family's living expenses increased significantly. To help make ends meet, Ernie took a second job at a pizza parlor, where the owner knew the family and understood their difficult situation. The shop owner commented that he always looked very tired and never rested, because he was always busy earning money for diapers, buying food, and paying for other living expenses. Samantha and Ernie began to face other problems. Samantha's YouTube videos were not as successful as she had hoped, and the family continued to struggle financially. She felt overwhelmed and sometimes shared inappropriate information in her videos, including content that should not have been made public. For example, she was caught filming videos while driving. Her obsession with fame increasingly took a toll on her family. Samantha began sharing more dramatic stories involving incidents she said she had been in, such as injuries, house fires, and car accidents. However, there was no evidence to confirm these incidents. Around this time, she told her sister-in-law that Ernie was physically abusing her. The sister-in-law mentioned seeing a small bruise on she, but Ernie denied it. He claimed that she often provoked arguments, but insisted he never hit her. However, he admitted to throwing a cardboard box at her, which led to her calling an ambulance. Ernie was arrested, and a restraining order was issued against him. Samantha later rescinded the order and said that it was not true that Ernie hit her. Both admitted that at that time, they were an incompatible couple, often arguing, but both insisted that there was never any physical violence. In late 2013, Samantha and Ernie welcomed their fifth child, a boy named Kadem. A few months later, they decided to get married to build a complete family. They left the baby with Samantha's sister and moved to Arkansas to get married. A year later, she posted her last video on YouTube, in which she shared advice for parents on how to prepare children for school, manage time, and raise children effectively. In February 2015, Samantha's life went through a major event. Her aunt Ginger called 911 to report that her house had been broken into by unknown individuals who tied up she and kidnapped Ernie. Ginger was the first to arrive at her home and tried to untie her. Samantha's mother, Rosie, later explained in an interview that Samantha had initially called her. However, because she was at a karaoke bar with her other daughter, she did not hear what Samantha was saying. Samantha was screaming desperately, saying that someone had broken into house and taken Ernie. Since she lived an hour's drive away, she couldn't come right away. Also, Rosie didn't understand exactly what Samantha was trying to convey, so she called her sister, Ginger, and asked her sister to go to Samantha's house to check on the situation. When the police arrived at the crime scene, they found things very suspicious. They asked Samantha why, while she was tied up, she was able to call her mother, Rosie. She explained that she used her nose to press the call button. She also said that the children were asleep and did not hear what was happening. They continued asking her that instead of calling her mother, why didn't she call 911 first? She replied that she could not call 911 with her nose, but could call her mother because it was the most recent number in her call history. Samantha recounted that while she and her husband Ernie were sleeping, they suddenly heard a noise. When she opened her eyes, she saw three men dressed all in black, with hoods covering their faces. One of them grabbed her, pulled her out of bed, pushed her to the floor, and quickly tied her up. Because their faces were covered, she could not identify them or know who they were. She felt confused, unable to understand what was happening. She repeated her account multiple times, emphasizing that she was asleep and woke up to find herself being tied up. What was strange was that Samantha had been tied up with a ribbon that she had kept in a drawer. She said the attackers beat Ernie so hard that he bled. According to her, they mocked Ernie and accused him of mistreating his wife. However, the officer found her account suspicious. For example, she described Ernie as having been beaten so hard that he was bleeding profusely, but they did not find any trace of the amount of blood she described. One reason investigators believed Samantha was lying was her inconsistent explanations for the attack. She initially claimed the attackers targeted Ernie because of the way he treated his wife. However, she later said the attack happened because Ernie's father had been a VPU and has been implicated in a number of suspicious incidents. A psychologist working with the detectives noted that Samantha saw herself as the center of attention and tended to exaggerate. Even though her husband Ernie is kidnapped, but she is only concerned about herself and the impact on her, rather than her children or her husband's safety. The psychologist concluded that Samantha exhibited narcissistic tendencies such as feeling superior to others and believing she deserved special treatment. This behavior had been evident not only during the investigation but also in her personal relationships. When detectives brought Samantha to the station for formal questioning, her statements only further convinced them she was lying. She continued to claim the crime was related to Ernie's father selling illegal drugs. However, when the detective expressed doubt about this explanation, she began altering her story. Samantha presented a new theory, different from her previous one. She claimed to suspect someone else. She said that she had just gone to the hospital to visit her friend who was in the hospital preparing to give birth. While there, she spoke to her friend's boyfriend and confided in him about the problems she was having with Ernie. She described herself as a very private person and do not share personal stories. However, at that moment, she decided to trust her friend's boyfriend and told him everything that had happened in her relationship with Ernie, as well as the terrible things Ernie had done to her. Hearing this, her friend's boyfriend replied that no man should treat a woman like that, and affirmed that he would make Ernie responsible for his actions. At the time, Samantha didn't think the man was serious, but now she suspects him. When the police asked for his identity, she said his name was John, and on Facebook, he went by the name John Rebel. They then went to her friend's hospital room and found the man she had mentioned. His real name was Jonathan Sanford, and he had recently been released from prison after serving time for abusing a family member. He also had a criminal history involving various other offenses. Jonathan was arrested and immediately confessed to his role in the crime. He also identified a second accomplice, his son-in-law, Jose Ponce. Furthermore, he claimed that Samantha was the one who planned the attack. Samantha meticulously planned everything. The day before the crime, she arranged a meeting with Jonathan, Jose, and another man to discuss the details of the attack. It was made clear that Samantha, although not physically present during the attack, was an accomplice. She provided her car and asked them to take her children to Walmart for groceries. Police reviewed Walmart's surveillance footage, which showed her children with Jonathan, Jose, and a man later identified as Octavius Rhymes. Jonathan confessed that they assaulted Ernie multiple times before taking him to a remote location. There, they forced him to kneel, and Jose attacked him in the back of the head. Jonathan led detectives to the site near a creek where the murder occurred and where they left the body. They quickly located Ernie's remains, which were naked and covered with dry branches. When Octavius, the third accomplice, was arrested, he admitted his involvement in the crime. However, Octavius also revealed that Samantha had orchestrated the entire plan. The police obtained a recording of Samantha's phone conversation with the men involved, Jonathan, Jose, Octavius, and discovered that on the night of the crime, they were constantly texting each other. On the day of the crime, when the police arrived at Samantha's house to question her, she asked one of the detectives if she could text her mother to explain what was happening. The detective allowed it, but they later found out that she didn't text her mother. Instead, she messaged Octavius. The message read, "Destroy his cell phone, turn it off, throw it away." On October 23, 2015, Samantha was arrested for the kidnapping and murder of her husband Ernie. The three other men involved in the crime, Jonathan, Jose, Octavius, were also arrested and charged with the same offenses. Jonathan and Jose pleaded guilty and were each sentenced to 50 years in prison. Octavius, however, chose to stand trial, claiming he wasn't guilty of manslaughter since he wasn't the one who fired the gun. In some cases, going to court can help prove your innocence if you have evidence in your favor. However, it can also lead to harsher sentences if found guilty. Octavius was sentenced to 23 years in prison for kidnapping and 75 years for his role in the murder, totaling 98 years in prison. Samantha also chose to stand trial. During her testimony, she claimed she had been taking sleeping pills due to her insomnia, which affected her decision-making and memory. She stated that she didn't remember anything from that night, including sending the messages. Samantha faced 2 trials. The first was for kidnapping, where she was found guilty and sentenced to several years in prison. The second trial, in September 2017, was for murder. She was again found guilty and given additional prison time. Samantha attempted to appeal this sentence twice, but both appeals were denied. She claimed she never agreed to kill Ernie, stating that this was not part of their original plan. According to her, the initial plan was to plant illegal drugs in his car and anonymously report him to the police to have him arrested. However, Jonathan, Jose, Octavius changed the plan and decided to kill Ernie instead. Jonathan partially agreed with Samantha's account. He stated that they informed Samantha of the new plan and that all she had to do was leave the door open, which she did. This showed she was aware of the plan and agreed to it, making her complicit in Ernie's death. Before these incidents unfolded, Samantha had asked her aunt Ginger to watch her children that evening. Ginger initially agreed, but she later called to say the plans had changed and that the children would now stay at her house. Jonathan picked up the children from Ginger's house and brought them back to Samantha's. This interaction between she and he was witnessed by others. That night, Samantha told several people that Ernie had threatened to take her children away and divorce her. She claimed that her actions were solely to protect her children, as she didn't want them taken from her. Ernie's friends and family were shocked by her claims, describing him as a kind and helpful person. Currently, the children are being cared for by Samantha's mother, while she is serving her prison sentence. Despite being incarcerated, she attempted to find new love by creating a profile on a dating site. In her dating profile, Samantha described herself as someone who is never boring. She mentioned enjoying meeting new people, doing makeup, watching anime, reading literature, playing games, and spending time with animals, especially cats. She admitted to being a bit of a bore but also funny, said she was trying to learn Spanish, and described herself as a chatterbox who loves long conversations. She added that the best gift anyone could give her is a book because of her passion for reading. Samantha ultimately gained the attention and fame she had sought, but she will now face the consequences by spending the rest of her life in prison. Her YouTube channel remains active, though she no longer uploads new videos. The comments on all her videos have been disabled by YouTube. Initially, when she uploaded the video, her videos rarely surpassed 100 views, but after committing her crime, many of them began to attract thousands of views. Justice was served, and the criminals received their just punishment. However, it was unfortunate for Ernie, who, despite his efforts to live a good life and support Samantha and her children, ended up being betrayed by her. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Taylor Wright. Taylor Wright was born on April 23, 1988. Friends and family described her as energetic and full of life. She was kind and empathetic, spending most of her life in North Carolina as she pursued her American dream. Taylor married Jeff Wright and later had a son named Drake. She earned a college degree and worked as an officer at the local police station, where she solved numerous crimes and was respected. To the outside world, Taylor's life seemed perfect. She had a loving husband, a son, and a respected job. However, the reality was that not everything in her life was as idyllic as it appeared. Taylor's close friends knew that she smoked marijuana occasionally, but she kept it a secret. During her time in the police force, she used it to manage stress and her heavy workload. She claimed that she didn't smoke regularly, only occasionally to relax after a long day. However, Jeff found out about her secret and left with her son after their divorce. This made Taylor realize that she needed to change her life. In 2016, Taylor decided to start over and moved to Pensacola, Florida, a small resort town with a population of about 52,000. She likes the warm, comfortable atmosphere here. After quitting her job, she began working as a private investigator. Armed with the knowledge and experience from her previous job, she was eager to apply her skills to help her clients. Taylor divorced her husband, but faced two major challenges: child custody and financial issues. Court proceedings to divide assets and child custody were ongoing. It was a complicated divorce, and despite her efforts to reach an agreement, they were unable to reach an agreement, which dragged on. In September 2017, frustrated by financial disputes, Taylor withdrew money from her bank account without telling Jeff. The money, which was her personal savings, was something she did not want to share with Jeff. After withdrawing the money, she gave it to a friend to keep. One of Taylor's friends, Ashley MacArthur, is the main character in this story. Taylor has known Ashley, a forensic scientist, for over a year. Although it was a relatively short period of time, they became very close, to the point where Taylor entrusted Ashley with a large sum of money. Ashley agreed to help and was supposed to deposit the money in a safe deposit box, keeping it a secret from Jeff until Taylor was ready to use it. However, she soon needed money to pay for a lawyer. When Taylor reached out to Ashley, she noticed that Ashley always had excuses for delaying the return of the money or only giving her small amounts. Ashley claimed she was having trouble withdrawing the funds or that there were issues with the bank. During this time, Taylor grew increasingly suspicious that something was wrong and worried that her money might have been spent. Despite Taylor's persistent requests for the full amount to be returned, Ashley continued to provide various excuses. On the evening of September 7, 2017, Taylor and her friend Cassandra Waller went out to dinner. Cassandra had quickly become close friends after Taylor moved to the area. Cassandra was new to the city and Taylor suggested they rent an apartment together. Cassandra, a kind teacher, agreed. Over time, they developed a strong friendship. During dinner, Taylor shared her financial concerns, especially about her friend Ashley, who she believed was intentionally delaying repayment of money. Taylor expressed concern that Ashley might have spent the money or not want to pay it back. This made Taylor very anxious and stressed because she desperately needed the money to hire a good lawyer. That evening, Cassandra comforted Taylor, reassuring her that the matter would eventually be resolved, although she also had doubts about whether the money was still there. Taylor mentioned that she had scheduled a meeting with Ashley the next day, September 8th, to go to the bank together. On the morning of September 8th, as Cassandra was getting ready for work, she said goodbye to Taylor. And on her way out of the house, she saw Ashley's sitting car in the driveway. They were finally ready to take care of their banking issues. The girls said goodbye, and Cassandra drove off to school. Later that day, Ashley called Cassandra to inform her that she and Taylor had decided not to go to the bank, opting instead to go to the farm. This confused Cassandra, as she knew Taylor was in dire need of money. The night before, Taylor had been very stressed and emotional at dinner, eager to get her financial situation sorted out. Ashley explained that she and Taylor had been discussing Taylor's struggles. Ashley suggested that horseback riding might help Taylor improve spirit, therefore them to cancel their bank trip and plan an alternative vacation. This explanation seemed strange to Cassandra, but she wished them luck anyway. However, after the call, Cassandra attempted to contact Taylor but received no response to her calls or messages. Later on, Cassandra received a text from Taylor, who said she couldn't talk at the moment but would call back later. Taylor explained that she was feeling uncertain and depressed due to her divorce and the changes in her life, and that she was going out of town for a few days. Cassandra believed her and decided to give her friend some space. A couple of days later, Cassandra reached out again, asking Taylor to return home as soon as she could. After that, she received no response. As the days passed, Cassandra tried to contact Taylor several times, but Taylor continued to ignore her calls and texts, even though some of the messages were marked as read. Taylor did not return home, and all of her belongings were still intact, which made Cassandra increasingly worried about her friend's safety. Cassandra wanted to see Taylor to make sure she was okay. Their neighbor said that Taylor had used drugs in the past and that she could become withdrawn during difficult times. With the difficulties Taylor was having, Cassandra was worried that she might relapse. Cassandra was feeling anxious. A week had gone by with no news, and waiting seemed pointless. Concerned, her reached out to the police. She told the officers that something was off, as Taylor was behaving unusually and had completely disappeared without explanation. In their shared apartment, there were numerous personal items belonging to Taylor that she would have taken if she had moved. There was no valid reason for her to ignore her friends' calls. Until now, Taylor had never done anything like this. After hearing Cassandra's story, the police took note of the unusual aspects of the case. The police focused on the time frame of her disappearance. Naturally, they interviewed Cassandra first, since she lived in the same house as Taylor and had a close relationship with her. Meanwhile, searches were conducted in the apartment that Cassandra shared with Taylor. In the apartment, the police found Taylor's identification, some cash, and an unloaded revolver. Cassandra explained that they kept weapons in the house for self-defense, but they had never used them. There was nothing else suspicious found, but it was evident that Taylor could not have left for an extended period without her documents, money, and belongings. Cassandra was questioned several times, and she quickly felt that the police suspected her and shifted their focus to proving her innocence. Despite this, she continued to cooperate with the investigation because she wanted to find out the truth. Eventually, she was ruled out as a suspect. Police initially focused on Jeff, given their contentious divorce, which involved the division of assets and custody of their son. Jeff certainly had a strong motive to harm Taylor, but police quickly determined that he was in North Carolina at the time of her disappearance and had not left the city. He had recently remarried and was focused on building a new life, with little regard for his ex-wife. Family members confirmed that despite their divorce, Jeff and Taylor remained on good terms for the sake of their 6-year-old son. Jeff was known to be non-confrontational and had never harmed Taylor. He was not even aware that she had withdrawn money and tried to conceal it. Therefore, there was no reason for him to be angry with her, prompting police to immediately eliminate him as a potential suspect. The police then decide to talk to Ashley, whom Cassandra had mentioned. Her behavior is very unusual. They bring her in for questioning, and the police quickly notice that she is even flirting with the police, which shows that she is not at all concerned about her friend's disappearance. Ashley seems to believe that Taylor is okay. She knows that Taylor has been addicted to marijuana in the past and thinks that Taylor is not really missing but is simply indulging her addiction. Ashley speculates that after receiving some money, Taylor relapsed and went off to use. However, this explanation seems unconvincing because Ashley had previously told Cassandra about the trip to the farm, but she didn't mention that. Only when the police press her does Ashley reveal that they went to the farm because Taylor wanted to relax. During the trip, Taylor confided in her about the stress she was under from the divorce proceedings, which had affected her mental health. After some time, Taylor expressed that she was tired and wanted to go home. She called an Uber and left. Ashley reported that she hadn't seen or heard from Taylor, despite making several attempts to call her. The police were aware of a money issue that Ashley was supposed to resolve but was avoiding, leading them to suspect she was hiding something. Suddenly, Ashley started mentioning a safe deposit box and money, claiming she had no knowledge of the funds being talked about. At this point, the police were confused as there was no clear information regarding the money. Police then decided to look into text messages between her and Taylor. They discovered numerous discussions about money, with Ashley frequently postponing meetings and transferring money. In the text messages, they talked about going to the bank on September 8th to withdraw money. Police requested footage from cameras near Taylor's home. After reviewing the videos, they found the women near Taylor's apartment, which matched Cassandra's earlier account. Ashley was in a car in front of the house when Cassandra left. Taylor then left the house and left with Ashley. Using geolocation, police tracked Taylor and Ashley's movements. Police reviewed surveillance footage from across the city and saw them buying beer and food, which appeared to be normal. However, no further information about their whereabouts was available after that. Inconsistencies began to appear between Ashley's testimony. However, the police decided to release her because they did not have enough evidence against her at that time. After that, Ashley contacted the police station almost daily to check on the progress of the investigation and to see if they had any new information. She wanted to help and often recounted the details of that day, as well as places where Taylor might have gone. During the conversation, she suggested that police should search alleys and talk to people who are selling illegal substances. She believed that Taylor was simply depressed and using drugs uncontrollably, and she repeatedly urged the police to follow up on this lead. She also talked about some suspicious suspects that she had seen with Taylor. Despite Ashley's best efforts to appear concerned, but police are still investigating her connection to Taylor's disappearance. Video evidence shows that Ashley visited the bank after Taylor went missing. During that visit, she withdrew money from Taylor's card. Police are particularly concerned about any potential conflict between Ashley and Taylor. Ashley had a strong motive for her actions, the $34,000 in question. It is suspected that she deliberately delayed her response because she did not want to return the money. Fearing that Taylor might report this to the police, Ashley may have decided to eliminate her friend. With Taylor missing for such a long time, there are concerns that she is no longer alive, but this needs to be confirmed. Ashley had a significant advantage. She worked for the police department and was married to a former deputy chief of the Battery Falcons. This created a difficult situation for the officers, who could not be sure of their safety while investigating her. As a result, they chose to keep the investigation secret. In October, Ashley was called in for questioning again. As the case progressed, documentary and circumstantial evidence accumulated that linked her to Taylor's disappearance. The police noticed a marked change in Ashley's behavior. She went from being outgoing and flirtatious to being withdrawn and clearly anxious. By this time, the police had verified that most of her previous statements were lies. They presented her with clear contradictions in her testimony and began investigating the cashing of hidden checks, which were likely to have forged signatures. At the very least, this could lead to accusations of fraud, but there could be darker motives behind these actions. Ashley initially claimed that she and Taylor had gone to East Milton, where they allegedly spent the day at a farm with animals. They were last seen on surveillance footage at 11:45 a.m., which was the only footage of Taylor alive during her initial interview. She was recorded on surveillance cameras in various locations throughout the day, but she was seen alone. As the police continued to talk to Ashley, she became increasingly nervous. Her answers became more confused, and she struggled to explain the discrepancies in her story. The police obtained a search warrant for the farmhouse but found no evidence in the large area. They then asked about the checks to determine if they were indeed counterfeit. If the checks were genuine, that would mean that Taylor was still alive when Ashley went to the bank, but Ashley could not give a clear answer. She just said that the checks could be real. While examining the geolocation data on Ashley's cell phone, police discovered that she had been staying at Britt Road for an extended period of time. This was another farm owned by her family. In fact, they had been there for several hours before Taylor disappeared. Ashley again confirmed that Taylor was going to buy a truck from a dealership. But this time, she added new details to the story. She said that Taylor was going back to the farm. Ashley had not mentioned these details in her earlier statements, claiming that Taylor had asked her to keep the incident private. Ashley believed that Taylor was still alive and would come back, so she did not want to harm her reputation in front of the police. However, she lied multiple times, leading the police to lose trust in her. The police were very interested in the Ashley family farm in Britt Road. It was a large, isolated area that would have been a fit place to commit the crime and cover it up. During their questioning, the police noted another strange aspect of Ashley's behavior: why she did not contact the police immediately when Taylor promised to return but did not show up. It was clear that Taylor was in trouble and needed help. Although Ashley tried to show concern to the police, she made no effort to find Taylor. Why did she wait until she was called in for questioning to show concern? These questions remain unanswered, but the police believe that Ashley was withholding important information. After her trip to the farm with Taylor, Ashley frequently called the police station to check on the investigation into her friend's disappearance, especially after her initial interview. She was anxious to know if she was being considered a suspect. After her conversation with the police, Ashley realized that she was the prime suspect in the case. She decided to ask for a lawyer, which ended her visit to the police station. On the morning of October 19, 2017, Ashley returned home. That afternoon, police obtained a search warrant for the farm where she and Taylor had been staying. Specially trained dogs were deployed in the search, and within 2 hours, they discovered a suspicious burial site. It was a small pit that appeared to have been recently dug and had been covered with concrete. A human skull was found in a shallow grave, along with other remains that had been hastily buried in the dirt and construction debris. The victim died from a gunshot wound to the head. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, the body could not be identified at the scene. However, based on clothing and jewelry, it is believed that it was Taylor. An autopsy confirmed that the body was Taylor Wright, 30. The identification was completed using dental records and DNA analysis. Ashley was arrested that evening, October 19, 2018, and charged with premeditated murder. Ashley's defense attorney believed in her innocence, but the abundance of circumstantial evidence made it challenging to convince the jury of her non-involvement in the crime. The attorney focused on Ashley's psychological profile, portraying her as sweet, pretty, and a police officer, which seemed inconsistent with being a violent criminal. Friends and family described Ashley as quiet, modest, and incapable of murder, especially when considering her physical attributes. In contrast, Taylor was physically stronger, leading the prosecution to question the defense's arguments. The lawyer developed his strategy based on the fact that the police lacked direct evidence to prove Ashley's guilt. There was no murder weapon, no witnesses, and no DNA linking Ashley to the body. This made it difficult for the prosecutor's office to connect Ashley to the crime. One witness was the victim's ex-husband, Jeff. He stated that he reached out to Ashley a few days after his Taylor went missing, trying to locate her to address some matters related to their marriage and divorce. Jeff contacted Ashley via social media. She claimed that the last time she saw Taylor was when she was exchanging money. She expressed concern about whether Taylor had arrived safely. This was a new detail that Ashley had never mentioned before, leading the police to realize that she was a pathological liar who had deceived everyone around her. Although Jeff was initially investigated and cleared as a suspect due to a solid alibi, he still had a strong motive. The lawyer attempted to redirect the jury's attention to Jeff's possible involvement in his ex-wife's murder. But these efforts were unsuccessful. The testimonies from Ashley's close friends greatly influenced the jury. They revealed that the Ashley was not as she seemed. She frequently visited a strip club. Bartenders and staff stated that just before Taylor went missing, Ashley spoke negatively about Taylor. Later, a gun associated with Taylor's death was discovered in Ashley's house. After new evidence emerged, the Ashley admitted to spiking Taylor's beer with a strong substance. However, when Taylor took a sip, she noticed the drink tasted odd and clearly spoiled. She spat it out and refused to drink any more, which likely led to the failure of Ashley's poisoning plan. Despite this admission, Ashley denied any involvement in the shooting of her friend. The prosecution argued that she had a strong motive. Ashley was holding on to a large sum of Taylor's money and was delaying returning it. Taylor desperately needed the money to pay her lawyer, so if Ashley delayed paying, Taylor would likely report the matter to the police. This situation gave Ashley a motive to get rid of her friend. The police later discovered the reason for the delay in returning the money. Ashley had been secretly having an affair with a man named Brandon, without her husband's knowledge. It was revealed that she had spent all of the money on Brandon, including giving him a motorcycle just weeks before Taylor went missing. This coincided with the time she had received money from Taylor. In court, Brandon admitted that Ashley had frequently given him expensive gifts, but he did not know where she got the money, as she had no other source for such a large sum of money. The police tracked Ashley's movements and discovered that she had gone to Home Depot after Taylor went missing. The police spoke to a sales clerk who confirmed that Ashley had purchased several bags of quick-drying solution. When the substance found in Taylor's grave was tested, it matched the quick-drying compound mentioned by the hardware store employee. This suggests that Ashley attempted to quickly hide Taylor's body on the farm to avoid detection. However, Ashley's attorney argued that she was not physically able to carry the heavy bags, dig the grave, and move Taylor's body. The jury then deliberated for about 4 hours and found Ashley MacArthur guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole after 25 years. She also served an additional 7 years for fraud related to Taylor Wright's finances. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Dickinson family. From the outside, the Dickinson family appeared perfect. They had everything needed for happiness, a loving mother and a devoted father who was willing to do anything for his family's well-being. Although they lived together in a small unit, they harbored many dark secrets that would surprise an outsider. For years, the Dickinson family faced deep-rooted issues that ultimately resulted in brutal murders. This tragic event took place in September 2021. One significant factor that contributed to this horrific outcome was depression, which can be devastating. Today, we will share one of the most heartbreaking stories from the criminal world. Lauren Dickinson, who lived in South Africa. She had a difficult childhood that made it hard for her to connect with teachers and other children. As a result, she often felt isolated and was frequently excluded from holidays and birthday celebrations. This experience contributed to mental health issues that began during her teenage years. Lauren is very anxious and struggles to control her emotions, always seeing threats in everyday situations. Despite her difficulties, she has had a passion for medicine since she was a child. After finishing school, she went to university and eventually became a general practitioner. In the following years, while working, Lauren met Graham, an orthopedic doctor, and they began dating. Despite their different medical specializations, they quickly developed a close bond and fell in love. Graham was outgoing and sociable, which complemented Lauren's more reserved nature. Their relationship seemed harmonious as they balanced each other's weaknesses. With Graham's influence, Lauren became more cheerful and open. They got married in May 2006. At that time, they lived in Pretoria, South Africa, where they built a house on nearly a hectare of land. The house had 4 bedrooms, a gym, a swimming pool. As they started their married life, Lauren shifted her career focus to gynecology and neurological diseases. However, almost from the beginning of her attempts to get pregnant, she decided to put her career on hold to have children. In 2012, Lauren returned to work at the medical center, but she was no longer a practicing physician. Instead, she became a part-time manager and her husband's assistant. The couple faced challenges conceiving due to health issues. Despite these difficulties, they were eager to have children. In 2013, they sought help from fertility specialists. After successful treatment, they welcomed a baby girl named Sarah, but she was born prematurely at 18 weeks. Sadly, Sarah did not survive. The loss was a shock to Lauren, who grieved every day for the next 2 months. The couple continued to consult with fertility specialists but continued to face challenges conceiving. Lauren underwent 17 rounds of IVF, often with low success rates. They eventually decided to use donor eggs and their first daughter, Leanne, was born. The family was very anxious during the pregnancy. Lauren feared another negative outcome and the possibility of losing the baby again. After Leanne was born, Lauren suffered from mental health issues. In 2015, doctors diagnosed her with anxiety, postpartum depression, and major depressive disorder when Leanne was just 18 months old. In response to the situation, Graham took a leave of absence to care for their daughter, and other family members stepped in to help. Following the doctor's advice, Lauren managed her illness with medication. Despite the challenges, the couple remained hopeful about having a second child, and after a few years, Lauren became pregnant again. An ultrasound revealed that she was expecting twins, which excited the parents as their family was set to grow. However, during the examination, they learned that one of the girls had a cleft palate, which caused Lauren significant anxiety. Fortunately, it was later discovered that the condition was not as serious as initially thought, which brought relief to Lauren's family. In 2018, twins Maya and Carla were born earlier than expected when they were in their 5th month. A successful surgery to correct the birth defect was performed. The family handled the ordeal well. After the surgery, Lauren and Graham decided to hire a nanny to help care for the family. The issues surrounding the birth left Lauren feeling anxious and compounded by panic attacks. Her husband Graham described her as an extremely anxious mother, constantly worrying about their children. Lauren was overprotective, often watching their every move, which irritated the kids. Despite these challenges, they managed to overcome many of the difficulties. The Dickinson family was relatively well off, allowing them to hire a maid, gardener, and nanny to help ease the stress on Lauren, who struggled with her mental health. By 2020, the Dickinson family had sold their house and land and moved abroad. They chose to rent a comfortable apartment. This new living situation has significantly improved their family relationships. For the first time in 10 years, Lauren stopped taking antidepressants. By March 2021, she was off all medications and had good mental health. This positive change inspired her to start doing CrossFit at least 3 times a week to stay in shape. In addition, she overcame her eating disorder. This change gave her a more positive outlook on life. Graham noticed positive changes in Lauren and was relieved that she seemed to have overcome her previous health problems. However, their happiness did not last long. By June 2021, Lauren's depression had returned. As a result, Lauren decided to see her psychiatrist again, who prescribed her antidepressants after she described feeling depressed and isolated. The Dickinson family was in a difficult situation. Graham was often home because he did not work, and the children became very attached to him, always wanting him around. As a result, Lauren felt left out and she often argued with her children, who preferred to be with their father. Although they appeared to be a happy family on the surface, things were actually very tense and could explode at any moment. In July 2021, South Africa experienced a series of riots that heightened Lauren's anxiety. The violent protests triggered panic within her family, prompting them to quickly decide to move to New Zealand, which they saw as a quieter and safer place. This move was also strategic, as Graham's parents lived there. However, their hopes were met with numerous challenges. Immigrating under such circumstances carried the risk of being denied a residence permit due to chronic illness or health conditions. To hide her struggles from the authorities, Lauren stopped taking her antidepressants shortly before the move. Her psychiatrist had told her that she was stable and no longer needed medication. Nevertheless, the pressure of the immigration process caused Lauren significant stress, worsened by her insomnia. She was only getting 2 hours of sleep each night because of the increased workload. Before the move, she began taking another medication in August 2021. The Dickinson family left South Africa on August 2nd. Lauren later described the trip as one of the most difficult times of her life, filled with anxiety about their future in New Zealand. Upon arriving in New Zealand, they settled in Timaru, a quiet town of about 30,000. The family's struggles continued. Their living conditions in New Zealand were not much better than in South Africa, with frequent power outages. In addition, Graham had to return to work earlier than expected, adding to the Dickinson family's stress. Graham started working at a hospital in Timaru and started his shift. Lauren hoped that they would have more time to deal with the challenges of moving house and adjusting to a new. Lauren felt overwhelmed with family issues and was left to care for 3 young children on her own without any support. On the appointed day, the Dickinson family went to the immigration office and were selected as potential citizens, while many other families faced rejection. Their application was accepted and they were told to wait for a response. The couple then went to a local Christian school to enroll their child in kindergarten. Graham noticed that during this time, Lauren seemed particularly sad, as if a dark cloud was hanging over her. She seemed far from the cheerful person who shared her life on social media. Even the smallest setback would send her spiraling deeper into depression. During this challenging period, Lauren kept in touch with her new friend Letitia through social media. She attempted to call Letitia, who had recently moved, to invite her to dinner, but her messages went unanswered. Meanwhile, Lauren and her spouse were looking for a rental property, but all the houses within their budget were in poor condition. They were temporarily staying in a house provided by the hospital, which only added to Lauren's stress as she was already feeling overwhelmed. However, on the night of September 14, 2021, Lauren had trouble sleeping. The next day, she had to take Maya and Carla to kindergarten and take Leanne to school. The morning was lively as the children, excited about their early rise and packing, chose their outfits without noticing their Lauren's fatigue. After dropping them off at school, Lauren returned home and lay down to rest. At 10:47 a.m., she received a photo from her kindergarten teacher showing her twins eating lunch at their table. Then Lauren cleaned the house, organizing her belongings because her family had just moved here. After running errands all day, Lauren picked up the girls from daycare and school around 3 p.m. and took them to the playground. Later, at home, Carla threw a tantrum because she missed their dad, who was at work. The other twin, Maya, had recently fallen out of bed and hurt her stitches. The girls cried so much that Lauren felt like a bad mother, trying to comfort them when they ignored her attempts to comfort them. Lauren cooked chicken nuggets for the children, but they were not satisfied with the meal. This led to a breaking point for her. Feeling overwhelmed, Lauren bathed the children and put them to bed around 6 p.m. Although she received several messages from friends in South Africa, she did not have time to reply to all of them. Graham returned home from work, had a quick dinner, and then left for an important meeting at 7 p.m. While he was away, chaos erupted in the house. About 20 minutes after he left, the children began to scream. In an attempt to calm them down, Lauren went to the garage to get some zip ties. Lauren told the children they were going to weave a necklace and placed the zip ties around their necks. No idea what was going on and were happily playing along. However, Leanne was angry with her mother and criticized what she was doing. For Leanne, it was not a game. In a fit of rage, Lauren began suffocating her children with pillows and blankets. She said that she was very sick and would soon die, and that she was killing her children because she was afraid that no one would take care of them. After Lauren believed the children were dead, she attempted to end your life. Lauren cut herself with a knife, but the blade was too dull to cut deeply. Ultimately, she resorted to pills, consuming several large doses of various medications. But these were not enough to end her life. In a moment of confusion, Lauren collapsed on the kitchen floor, lost in her thoughts about her actions. At that moment, Graham came home. He noticed something was wrong with her and asked if she was okay, but she responded in a way he couldn't understand. Sensing something was very wrong, he rushed upstairs to check on the kids. Going up to the room, he hoped everything was okay, but instead, he found the lifeless bodies of his children on the bed. The horrifying reality unfolded before his eyes. In desperation, he sought help. With the help of colleagues at a nearby hospital, he ran out into the street to meet one of them. As he closed the door behind him, the last thing he saw was Lauren lying on the floor with her eyes closed. He didn't know if she was alive, his only concern was his daughters. So he didn't check on Lauren. A friend at the hospital tried to revive the children, but their efforts were in vain. Around 9:40 p.m., neighbors heard a loud noise, which turned out to be a door slamming as Graham rushed outside. Soon after, they heard sobbing and screaming coming from the house. Graham approached the house and admitted that everything was his fault. He was distressed about leaving the children with their mother, who was not mentally stable. Neighbors called emergency services, and the police and ambulance arrived around 10 p.m. Officers discovered the bodies of the murdered children in the house. The twins, Maya and Carla, aged 2, and their 6-year-old, Leanne, had been killed. In the kitchen, police found Lauren alive and conscious. She answered their questions but spoke very softly. The Lauren appeared to be in shock. The police discovered shallow cuts on her hands and forearms. When asked if she had used any illegal drugs that evening, she denied it. Later, police found 9 medication bottles in her trash, along with a package containing hundreds of cable ties. A toxicological examination revealed that her blood did not contain any illegal drugs or alcohol, but it did show high levels of antidepressants, sedatives, and other medications. 40-year-old Lauren was promptly arrested and taken to the hospital for help. The brutal murders of the Dickinson family shocked the local community and then spread throughout New Zealand and South Africa. The nanny who worked for the family was speechless when she heard the news. She struggled to accept that it was true. In an interview, the nanny described Lauren, Graham, and their children as an ideal family, saying that she had never witnessed any arguments or conflicts within their household. The nanny firmly believed that Lauren loved her children deeply. She last saw the children in June 2021, when the Dickinson family was excited about moving to New Zealand. After Lauren was taken into custody, Graham had to return to South Africa because his visa was expiring in December 2021. He later returned to participate in the trial. He communicated with Lauren and found it hard to believe that she had harmed the children. The day after her arrest, Lauren woke up in the hospital. She was in disbelief about her situation and was even more shocked, and the police entered her room and accused her of killing 3 girls. On September 18th, Lauren Dickinson was officially charged with triple murder. Lauren admitted to the crime but stated that she did not want to harm her children. She explained that her actions stemmed from her mental instability and the overwhelming challenges she faced as a mother. Lauren expressed feelings of inadequacy in her parenting, struggling to manage her children, who were often screaming. Eventually, the stress became unbearable for her. She recounted how she killed her children, first Carla, then Leanne, and finally Maya, using pillows and blankets to suffocate them. Although Lauren denied experiencing auditory or visual hallucinations, her lawyer requested a psychiatric evaluation following the preliminary court hearing. During this time, Lauren refused to eat and lost weight, dropping to 47 kilograms. Her physical and mental health issues delayed the case for a month, leading to the rescheduling of the hearing for July 2023, nearly 2 years after the tragic events. In court, Lauren's lawyers sought to focus on her mental health struggles as part of their defense strategy. New Zealand law is very lenient towards those who commit crimes against children, especially in cases of manslaughter, where the offender can receive a suspended sentence. It was important for the defense to show that Lauren's actions were a response to extreme stress, showing that she considered killing her child a form of self-defense. The trial began on July 17, 2023, and lasted 4 weeks. Attorneys have said that Lauren had suffered from years of health problems and struggled with depression. Her mental health struggles led her to consider killing her daughter as a way to deliverance. Tensions had recently escalated between Lauren and her children. They often disobeyed her, which led her to resort to physical punishment and consider sedatives. During the trial, Graham revealed that Lauren had raised concerns about the children's safety on 3 separate occasions, but he had not taken them seriously. Each time he left the house, he felt remorse. In May 2019, Lauren expressed a desire to smother their daughters with pillows. In July 2011, she mentioned wanting to cut their femoral arteries in the bathroom. Despite these alarming statements, they were not considered serious at the time. Lauren has a hard time managing her spoiled twins, expressing her frustration by saying, "Children drive she crazy. They are wild, brazen, and disobedient. She tired of them. She wish I could start over and make different choices." Lauren had to face many difficulties to become a parent, making it difficult for others to believe that she could hurt the children. During the trial, Graham described her difficulties in raising her children. He rarely saw her show affection to her children, and they did not seem to seek her out. This became especially evident when he was home more often and the children clung to him, leaving Lauren without the opportunity to play with them. He sensed something was wrong, but attributed it to her withdrawn personality and inability to participate in fun activities. Graham mentioned that New Zealand did not meet Lauren's expectations. The new country felt completely different from what she had envisioned. This led to a significant cultural shock from everything she encountered. Graham expressed forgiveness towards his wife, believing she was overwhelmed by the challenges she faced. He urged others to forgive her and pray for Lauren. Meanwhile, the prosecutor's office aimed to demonstrate that the triple murder was premeditated. They presented evidence showing that the actions were methodical and intentional, including search engine queries. Lauren had repeatedly searched for lethal doses of various medications for children and methods of strangulation. Additionally, she had confided her disturbing plans to family members on several occasions. The prosecutor argued that Lauren was frustrated and angry with her children because she felt unable to manage them and was resentful towards them, believing that the girls negatively impacted her relationship with her husband. Psychiatrists confirmed that Lauren was likely in an unstable mental state at the time of the crime. Experts noted that Lauren was experiencing significant anxiety during this period. On August 14, 2013, the jury began reviewing the evidence in the case, which included hundreds of pages of research reports and documents from police and experts. After initial deliberations, the jury was unable to reach a consensus on Lauren's guilt. They returned to the office to review detailed police footage of the victim's parents, which took more than 15 hours and lasted 2 days. On August 16, after a hearing at Christchurch, Lauren's attorney, Antui, said the best place for Lauren to serve her sentence was in hospital, a placement that all 3 mental health professionals who evaluated her agreed with. Lauren Dickinson will be detained at hospital pending assessment before a sentencing date is finalized. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Mia Skadhoj Stevn. Late at night on February 5, 2022, a group of young people gathered at a bar. It was cold outside, so everyone was dressed warmly. Mia was wearing dark clothes, except for her white sneakers. The group wanted to have a good time and enjoy the weekend with other college students. And she planned to go home in her friend's car. After spending several hours at a party, they moved between nightclubs along the street until they finally reached one club. Mia danced energetically, even with strangers, and couldn't stop. She drank moderately and wanted to keep the fun going. However, as closing time approached around 6 in the morning, it was time to leave. Everyone hurried out, with many heading home much earlier than Mia. Mia had no one to drive her home, and with the money she had, she couldn't afford a taxi. At the party, she met a 22-year-old man from Aalborg. After the club closed, he waited for her outside. He chatted with Mia and her friends for a while before they all decided to go home. Mia planned to take the bus and contact her friends the next day. However, hours had passed since she said goodbye to her friends on the street, and none of her friends and relatives had been able to contact her. Initially, her family assumed that she and her friends were just out enjoying themselves, and that she was probably at a friend's or boyfriend's house. However, when Mia's boyfriend called, he revealed that he hadn't seen Mia all day and that she had ignored his messages. By noon, Mia's mother was in a panic after calling all of Mia's friends and finding out that no one had seen her since she left the club, and that no one could get in touch with her. Mia was usually responsible and kept in touch, so her lack of response was alarming. The situation became increasingly worrying for her family, especially her mother, who was really scared. It was later confirmed that Mia was last seen at 6 a.m. and since then, no one knew where she was. Mia's family decided to report her disappearance to the police. Although the situation involved a party and a girl who had been drinking, the police quickly began a search. Unfortunately, there were no leads for the investigation. Mia's father drove around the area looking for her, while her mother and sister took to social media to ask for help from anyone with information. They shared photos and descriptions of Mia, including what she was wearing. As such cases are rare in Denmark, the local community came together to support the family, actively sharing posts and information to help raise awareness of the case. The police continued their investigation. They tried to gather information, but unfortunately, the information was very limited. They contacted all local residents in the area where Mia went missing, asking for any relevant documents, especially photos and videos from mobile phones that may have recorded Mia at the party. They also reviewed footage from surveillance cameras in nearby stores and establishments. The situation was complicated by the fact that it took place in a crowded area with many clubs and bars, making it difficult to identify any one person. Police interviewed a young man who had met Mia and was one of the last people to interact with her. However, he had a confirmed alibi because he had left the area in a taxi. Witnesses submitted thousands of video files taken at nearby parties. As a result, police received hundreds of hours of video footage that needed to be scrutinized. It was a huge task, and police spent days reviewing the footage. After reviewing the initial videos, police found no suspicious activity and the statements of Mia's friends were verified. Mia did indeed leave the club at around 6 a.m., chatted briefly with friends, and may have headed toward the bus stop. Meanwhile, the investigation has been looking into Mia's background, hoping to find useful clues. Mia was a lively and kind 22-year-old girl when she went missing. Her family described her as intelligent and full of energy. Mia was studying at Aalborg, the largest university in the country, and was close to graduating from the medical faculty. In addition to her studies, she was an aspiring model and had participated in several photo shoots. There was nothing in her background to suggest that a tragedy would occur. She was not involved in any criminal activities, did not use illegal drugs, and had no history of mental illness. Although her friends noticed that Mia was acting strangely, she drank heavily and flirted while dancing with many strangers, attracting attention with her charm. Could this behavior attract a dangerous person who saw Mia as an easy target? It has been more than a day since she went missing. Police are once again appealing to the public, asking anyone with information to come forward to help locate Mia. They are also reviewing footage of the party that continues to come in, which requires significant resources. All young people with whom Mia interacted that evening, including her friends and new acquaintances, have been brought in for questioning. On the same day, police noticed something unusual in a surveillance camera recording. At 6:09 a.m. on February 6th, the Mia approached a bus stop located 300 meters from the club. It seemed that she was waiting for a bus to return home. After a brief exchange with the driver, she chose not to get into a car and continued to wait for the bus, which then drove away. However, the bus did not arrive. Even at 7:35 a.m., an hour and a half later, she was still standing at the bus stop. It was clear that she was at risk of freezing, as she was not dressed appropriately for the weather. She appeared to be losing hope of catching the bus and felt uncertain about what to do next. During this time, a car approached her. The driver slowed down and they talked. Then Mia got in the car. It is likely that the driver did not arouse any suspicion from her. He had gained her trust. The police suspect that he could be someone she knew from a party or could be an unlicensed taxi driver. Officers thoroughly examined all surveillance footage but were unable to determine the license plate number or identify the driver's face due to the poor quality of the footage. It is therefore unclear which vehicle the girl entered. However, it was clear that the driver was the last known person to see Mia alive, making it important to locate and interview him. On February 8th, officers decided to reach out to the public for assistance once again. They hoped that someone who recognized the driver would contact the police. Officers also spoke to Mia's friends again to clarify the timeline of events. Her friends provided a detailed account of that night. After everyone returned home in the morning, a brief conversation in the parking lot at around 6:20 a.m. A friend who accompanied Mia to the bus stop gave a detailed description of her route. This information proved useful. The police were able to discover several additional video cameras that may have captured footage of Mia and the car that stopped to pick her up. This investigation led to important discoveries. It was discovered that the car had an unusual license plate. Additionally, the quality of the footage was high enough that all the markings on the license plate could be clearly seen. This helped them gather information relevant to the case. On February 9, 2022, police tracked down the owner of a 2015 Volkswagen Golf who lived a few streets away from a local club. When they arrived at the address, they discovered that it was the car that had been caught on surveillance cameras. Police investigated and linked the car to two men, childhood friends with previous convictions for minor crimes, including a previous incident where they pretended to be police officers at a football match. Although both men denied knowing anything about Mia's disappearance, the fact that police were given 24-hour access to the car under Danish law suggested that they were involved in the case. The two men were then brought in for a preliminary hearing, which had to take place within 24 hours of their arrest. During the trial, the prosecutor presented his case and the evidence he had gathered. The judge then reviewed this evidence to decide if the detainees should remain in custody or be released. This process ensures that the rights of the accused are protected while also ensuring public safety. If someone is deemed potentially dangerous, it becomes critical to act swiftly. By February 10, 2022, it had already been 4 days since the Mia went missing. No one had provided any information about her location, and there were no ransom demands. With every minute that passed, the chances of finding her alive were slim. A preliminary hearing for the men took place in the county courthouse, but it was closed to the public. During this hearing, it was decided that one of the men would be released. This decision does not mean that he is no longer a suspect in the case. Thomas Thompson, a 30-year-old electrician, then agreed to stay. He agreed to be held for 4 weeks while police thoroughly investigated his background and spoke to some of his acquaintances. Thomas was born on June 18, 1985, and grew up in southeastern Denmark. Later, he moved to a small town in Denmark with a population of about 500 people. Initially, he lived in an apartment before moving to his grandparents' farm. He built a career in the military, advancing to the rank of sergeant. After leaving the military, he trained as an electrician. Thomas was known to be a smart, polite, calm, and pleasant individual. The main reason for Thomas's arrest was that he was the owner of the black Volkswagen. In addition, Thomas failed to provide an alibi. The police began checking the GPS system. When they impounded Thomas's car, they discovered that he had attempted to turn off the GPS about 4 hours before meeting Mia at the bus stop. A specialized digital forensics team, using surveillance camera footage, was able to accurately trace the route of Thomas's car. It all started at Thomas's residence, where he drove around the city several times, picked up a girl, and then traveled through nearby towns with brief stops. Thomas spent several hours at Lysistrata and returned 2 days later. This part of the route seemed particularly suspicious. Police decided to use specially trained dogs to examine the area. The dogs found a hair elastic, pieces of clothing, underwear, and other items scattered nearby. These items were aligned in a straight line, suggesting that the owner might have been running through the forest, fallen, or been attacked, gradually losing her belongings. The dogs led the police deeper into the forest near a local village, where they found areas of disturbed earth. When they dug these spots up, they uncovered human remains that were cut into several pieces. Police discovered 231 pieces of bodies, many of which were scattered around the burial site. The body is likely Mia's, as some of the clothing matches what she was wearing that night. All of the collected evidence was sent to a lab for analysis. Forensic experts quickly confirmed that the remains were Mia's. The medical examiner determined that Mia had died from strangulation, and that an electric saw had been used to dismember her body. Most of the body parts were severely damaged, indicating that they had been stored in a strong alkaline solution for an extended period of time. On the night Mia went missing, Thomas did turn off the GPS in his car at 2:14 a.m. However, due to a technical malfunction, the location continued to be recorded every 15 seconds. When questioned about why he attempted to disable the tracking system, Thomas claimed it was because a police officer had a personal vendetta against him and was following him. Thomas only reactivated the GPS at 9:23 a.m., likely after the Mia had already been killed. The Thomas then took her body to his house, where he began dismembering it. Thomas spoke up and confessed to giving Mia a ride in his car. He explained that he was passing a bus stop and saw Mia, who was not dressed appropriately for the cold weather. Thomas offered to drive her home out of kindness. He said that she had been flirting in the car and seemed comfortable, which prompted him to offer her a ride, which she agreed to. They drove through populated areas before entering a wooded area. Thomas claimed that they decided to have consensual sex there, but at some point Mia had a seizure. He said that she accidentally fell and injured her neck, which led to her death. Thomas's story then began to change with each conversation he had with the police. He would suddenly mention that Mia had gotten out of the car and tried to escape but tripped and fell, resulting in her death. When Mia showed no signs of life, Thomas panicked and felt confused about what to do. However, he did not call emergency services for fear of being charged with murder. Having been in legal trouble before, he was worried that the situation would only get worse. Instead, Thomas decided to take the body to his home in an attempt to conceal it. Initially, He tried to dissolve the body in a chemical solution, but after almost a day, it was clear that it didn't work as he had hoped. Next, he chopped up the remaining pieces, burying most of them while scattering some smaller fragments around the burial area. He attempted to burn his clothes from the day of the murder, the car mat, and the Mia's bag, which might have had bloodstains. In the ashes, police found clothing scraps and a tool that could have been used in a crime. Thomas claimed that his actions were driven by fear and desperation. However, the police had a different perspective, believing that the elaborate methods he used to dispose of the body revealed a level of cruelty that only a disturbed person could exhibit. The police believed that Thomas initially intended to harm the Mia by offering her a ride home. His actions suggested a deliberate plan, especially when he tried to disable the GPS tracking. Thomas's persistence worked against him. It took him 2 attempts to lure the Mia into his car. He waited for an hour and a half, looking for the right moment when the Mia, feeling cold and desperate, would agree to get in. Once Mia entered the vehicle, he threatened her, brandished a weapon, and assaulted her. Afterward, he decided to eliminate her to prevent her from reporting him to the police, resorting to a horrific method to do so. The medical examiner concluded that strangulation was the most likely cause of death. Many of the body parts were never found, possibly because they were hidden. This suggests that there was no voluntary consent to any intimate relationship. The evidence of the assault was clear, suggesting that the murder was the result of Mia's desperate resistance. Although there were indirect signs of rape, it could not be confirmed due to the condition of the body. Thomas remained silent and refused to provide any further details. The prosecutor's office reported that Thomas hunted throughout the night and selected a victim, waiting for the right moment to trap her. Police discovered that Thomas made 3 stops in a wooded area, suggesting he chased her by car or that she attempted to flee multiple times. But he was able to catch her and pull her back. During a search of Thomas's car, Mia's DNA was found inside. When police searched Thomas's home, Mia's blood was found, confirming his crime. Police analyzed Thomas's behavior. It seemed that while he was trying to dispose of the body, he maintained his normal routine, except for taking a day off from work. On that day, Thomas attacked Mia but also socialized freely with friends, ordering pizza and delivering food, including many sweets. It seemed that Thomas had no remorse. Mia's relatives condemned Thomas's claim that Mia had consensually consented to sex with a stranger, calling it a blatant lie and disrespectful to her. The investigation found that in 2019, he was caught stalking a student, and that similar incidents had occurred in 2015 and 2017 when he peeped into the windows of 2 other girls and behaved inappropriately. One victim said that one night, she heard a knock on her window. When she looked out, she saw a strange man with his pants down, staring blankly at her, oblivious to the pouring rain. Despite being discovered, he appeared satisfied and quickly fled the scene after she alerted her parents. A sketch of him was later created. In 2010, a disturbing incident occurred when 3 women were awakened in their apartment by a noise and found a man inside. He attacked one of them and raped her before fleeing the scene. The police were called, but the attacker was never arrested. There was insufficient evidence and he was not held accountable for his actions. However, the victims were able to come forward as witnesses to help build a case against the criminal. Additionally, Thomas's ex-girlfriend reported on his behavior during their relationship. She said he was arrogant and manipulative, demanding complete compliance and losing his temper even at minor acts of disobedience. She also reported an alarming incident where, after breaking up with Thomas, she discovered that the brake hose on her car had been cut. Thankfully, this did not result in an accident. But she was unable to prove that Thomas was responsible, although she was convinced that he had done it. A third witness discovered a file on Thomas's computer containing a long list of wives along with disturbing content. Several witnesses described Thomas regularly watching videos depicting extreme violence, including murder and sexual assault. Psychiatrists evaluated Thomas and described him as having narcissistic personality traits, identifying Thomas as a sociopath lacking empathy for others. Despite this assessment, he was deemed sane. Despite the overwhelming evidence presented by the prosecution against Thomas, he pleaded not guilty to raping and murdering Mia and showed no remorse. However, Thomas accepted responsibility for improperly disposing of her body and dismembering her. He denied any involvement in the murder, claiming that she had died in an accident, but this explanation was unconvincing. Even if Mia had been seriously injured in the accident, he could have called for help, which would have proven his innocence. Instead, Thomas chose to dismember her body without attempting first aid, despite he knowing the necessary techniques. In June 2023, 38-year-old Thomas Thompson was convicted of murdering Mia Skadhosh-Stephen. He was also convicted of aggravated indecency with a body. The prosecutor asked for a life sentence, while Thomas's attorney argued for a reduced sentence. Ultimately, Thomas was sentenced to life in prison because he was deemed a threat to society. He will be eligible for parole after serving 10 years. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Jordan Graham. Montana is the largest landlocked state in the United States, known for its stunning views of the Rocky Mountains and beautiful lakes. A major attraction in Montana is Glacier Park, a vibrant tourist destination, particularly during summer. The park features approximately 700 hiking trails for visitors to explore. Cody Johnson was born in San Jose, California. After his parents divorced, his mother, Sherry, raised him on her own. They always share a close. Eventually, Sherry decided to leave California and move to Montana with Cody. He is a kind, cheerful, and humorous person. He enjoys spending time outdoors, participating in activities like fishing and hiking, but his greatest passion is cars. He collected, repaired, and raced them with friends. After graduating, Cody found a job assembling custom cars, which he naturally enjoyed. His boss was his close friend Cameron, and Cody's career was thriving. However, he dreamed of settling down, meeting someone, and starting a family to fully establish himself in Montana. Cody's bachelor life was about to change. In 2011, he met and started dating Jordan Graham, a 21 years old. She was shy and reserved, only opening up when she felt comfortable. Jordan shared Cody's love for nature and travel. They spent a lot of time hiking together in beautiful Montana locations, especially enjoying visits to Glacier Park. Jordan loved children and often babysat for her friends, expressing her dream of having her own child. She came from a religious family with strict rules, including a ban on sex before marriage. Cody told friends that he really liked Jordan, and he began attending church with her friends and family. He shared that their relationship was growing stronger, and he was so in love that he told his mother he had found the person he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. In December 2012, Cody announced his engagement to Jordan on social media. Friends were thrilled about the engagement. 6 months later, on June 29, 2013, Cody and Jordan got married in an outdoor ceremony. They appeared to be the happiest and most perfect couple. They received many congratulatory speeches, making the event truly wonderful for them. After the long and significant day, they moved into their first home. Instead of going on a honeymoon, they decided to spend their free time working on the house. Cody took a week off from work and was expected to return on July 8, 2013. On Sunday, July 7th, Cody had plans to go kayaking with his father-in-law, Stephen. However, he later contacted Stephen to cancel, mentioning that Jordan had a surprise for him. He and Jordan attended an afternoon church service and then went for a walk by the lake. After the walk, Cody did not return to work, which was unusual for him. His boss, Cameron, became worried and decided to visit his home. Finding no one there and no signs of a break-in, Cameron checked the garage for Cody's car and found his phone, which he usually kept with him. Cameron then reported Cody missing to the police. The detectives first needed a statement from Cody's wife, Jordan. She explained that on their way back from Dairy Queen, Cody received a call and talked for about 30 minutes. She didn't know who called, but Cody appeared clearly agitated by the end of the conversation. When they arrived at Jordan's house, she realized her phone was low on battery and she had left her charger at work. She got back in her car and went to work, leaving Cody in the garage. Later, she received a text from Cody saying he was going for a ride with someone. When she returned home after work, she found her husband was not home. He had gone out in a dark-colored car with Washington state plates. This is nothing unusual, because Cody loved cars and often went to races with new friends, sometimes late at night. She did not report him missing for fear that if he returned, he would realize she had overreacted. Cody and Jordan's group of friends quickly set out to access Cody's social media accounts, hoping to find information about his whereabouts. They obtained a call log and learned that he received a call from a Washington number around the time Jordan mentioned. Since Jordan recalled seeing a car with Washington plates, this was already a lead. The police traced the plate to a man named Jose. Upon questioning, Jose explained that he had called Cody about some tools he had borrowed. The conversation was ordinary, and Jose couldn't recall anything significant related to Cody at that time. Jose is no longer a suspect because he has an alibi, although the police found it odd due to the Washington plates on the car. It's been 3 days since Cody was last seen and police still have no more leads. The search for he intensified. Everyone joined the search day and night. Volunteers joined in, and his family and friends did everything they to find him. They visited the police station to answer various questions, but the responses often didn't align. Jordan was mistaken in her testimony when talking about her time and actions. Jordan explained that Cody left without telling her where he was going or who he was with. Then, she suddenly mentioned receiving a message from he, saying he needed to go for a ride with friends. She also noted that whenever Cody's friends visited, he always took them to Glacier Park for a trip. The investigator highlighted that her story about her husband's disappearance differed from the police's information and urged her to be completely honest. One day, Jordan and her mother went to the police station and showed them an email she had received that morning from a stranger named Tony. The email briefly stated that Tony wanted Jordan to know that there was no need to look for Cody anymore because he was gone. They should stop looking. The email also mentioned that he had gone hiking with friends that night and had fallen off a cliff. Everyone was shocked and assumed that he was dead. It was discovered that Jordan knew Tony. He was a co-worker of Cody's. The police tracked down Tony and asked him to testify. Tony explained that he hadn't seen Cody for some time and hadn't been in contact because Cody was busy preparing for his wedding. He had not used his email recently. He provided all of his phone and computer data to the investigation, and the police concluded that Tony was not involved. Using the details from the email, Jordan organized his own search group and ventured into the rugged and winding terrain. Due to the park's vast size, everyone was aware that the search might drag on for weeks. The following day, the search continued. Jordan led the team in a specific direction, as if she was on a mission to reach a particular location. They drove through many roads and cliffs, any of which could have been Cody's path. Jordan told her friends she wanted to find a certain place Cody had dreamed of visiting. Jordan suddenly stopped the car and jumped out near the loop trail. Next to the trail was a steep slope filled with rocks and tree roots, appearing very dangerous. Undeterred, Jordan climbed over the fence and made her way to the edge. She looked down and shouted to the others that she saw someone at the bottom of the ravine. She claimed it was Cody and called the others over. The search party contacted the park rangers, but since it was already getting dark and too risky to descend, the search was postponed until morning. At 8 a.m. on July 12th, the search for Cody came to a tragic end. Rescuers used ropes tied to trees to descend. Then, they discovered a blue sneaker, identical to the one Cody wore on the day he disappeared. At the bottom, they found Cody face down in the shallow water near the waterfall. Beside him lay a small piece of black cloth, and he was missing his wedding ring. As news spread, friends and family wondered why Cody was at that location at night. Cody's friend, Eddie, mentioned that while Cody enjoyed sightseeing and long walks, he never ventured off the trail, especially in the dark, and was afraid of heights. Cody always hikes on safely fenced trails in lower areas. He once confided to a friend that his fear of heights was so severe that he couldn't even climb a ladder to change a light bulb at his mother's house. Shortly after Cody was found, Jordan posted a wedding photo on Instagram. She said she missed Cody very much, saying that not a day went by without her thinking about him. He was in her heart forever and that she knew he was in a better place now, watching over her as her angel. She said she loved him with all her heart and soul, and hoped to see him again one day. 2 weeks later, the police were still searching for answers about the mysterious email. During the investigation, Cody was buried. At his funeral, Jordan spent the entire time staring at her phone, showing no emotion. Maybe this is how she gets over her pain, but her friend, Kimberly, who witnessed the wedding, thought the behavior was too strange. Kimberly went to the police station to provide information for the investigation. She told the officer that she had been receiving messages from Jordan a few weeks before and following Cody and Jordan's wedding. She recounted conversations with Jordan before the wedding, mentioning that Jordan seemed more excited about the wedding itself than about Cody's feelings. It seemed that Jordan enjoyed the prospect of being a bride more than the reality of being a wife. Friends noticed that Cody seemed more in love with Jordan than she was with him. Kimberly recalled Jordan questioning whether marrying Cody was the right choice. Jordan was very anxious about the wedding night and wondered if she was making a mistake by getting married. The night after the wedding, Jordan messaged she, expressed uncertainty about everything that happened on the wedding night, and mentioned that a lot had happened. When she wanted to hear more details about what happened, Jordan insisted that it was a conversation best had in person rather than over the phone. During several days of texting, Jordan shared with Kimberly that she had told Cody she was on her period to avoid having sex. But they were supposed to discuss it today. Jordan later mentioned that if her husband forced her to do something, she might have a mental breakdown. On the evening of July 7th, after having dinner with friends, Kimberly received another message from Jordan. In it, Jordan said stating that she wanted to talk to Cody about her true feelings. Kimberly wished them understanding and resolution. Later, at 9 p.m., Jordan appeared at Kimberly's door, saying the conversation hadn't gone well. Cody had gotten angry, and she had left to see her brother. From all this, it seems that from the very beginning, Jordan knew where to find Cody. Her testimony about him wanting to go to Glacier Park that day, and her silence about his disappearance seemed suspicious. Kimberly had a gut feeling that Jordan was involved in Cody's death. Detectives were already skeptical of Jordan's story, given the numerous inconsistencies in her account. Their suspicions grew when Kimberly provided evidence in the form of text messages. Then, the police discovered the IP address of the email, which revealed that it was created and sent from Jordan's father's house. This contradicted Jordan's claim that Cody had left that night and they spent it apart. Recordings of phone conversations revealed that Jordan was lying, as both phones and their owners were in Glacier Park at 9:15 p.m. Using this time frame, police obtained CCTV footage from the park's entrance, which showed Cody's car and both Cody and Jordan inside. Jordan was then asked to come to the police station and tell the truth about what happened that night. During questioning, Jordan was forced to recount what happened on the day of the incident. She revealed that she had opened up to Cody about her feelings, which led to a heated argument. Cody suggested that if she truly felt this way, they should consider annulling their marriage. However, Jordan was hesitant, fearing the potential damage to her reputation that would come with getting divorced just 8 days after their wedding. Then, they got into their car and drove to a national park, and they continued their argument. At one point, Jordan mentioned something about a blindfold. As they walked across a bridge and climbed over a fence, their argument escalated. Jordan suggested that they should wait a bit before getting married, but Cody disagreed. They continued to argue. Eventually, Cody tried to grab she. However, she said the incident that followed was a result of anger. Despite her assertion that it was an accident, but the policeman did not believe it. Instead of running for help, Jordan attempted to forge an email on her father's computer. The question remains as to why Cody the need to climb over the edge of the cliff, especially if he was afraid of heights. Even for those who aren't afraid of heights, climbing a 300-foot cliff in the dark and blindfolded is a huge challenge. According to recent information, Jordan was charged with the murder of Cody Johnson just 8 days after their wedding. She will be released, but placed under house arrest and must undergo a psychiatric evaluation. Friends of Cody believe that everything is progressing well and that justice will soon be served. Jordan was initially arrested and charged with second-degree murder and perjury. But these charges were later increased. The prosecutor's office first charged Jordan with second-degree murder for allegedly pushing her husband, Cody, off a cliff in Glacier National Park. However, her charges were later upgraded to first-degree murder. Some of Jordan's friends, who have known her since childhood, mentioned that she was crying hysterically before reaching the altar and seemed to have no joy about getting married. Many people noticed her strange behavior, observing that she acted as if nothing had happened, showing no emotion. When Jordan's trial began, her defense team argued for a second-degree murder conviction, claiming it was an accident during a heated argument. However, the prosecution insisted it was more than an accident. Evidence suggested that Jordan told Cody she had a surprise for him, and a bandage-like item was found near the body, indicating a deliberate act. Additionally, phone calls, text messages, a fake email, her failure to notify anyone of her husband's disappearance, and her lack of emotion after the incident strengthened the prosecution's case, suggesting that Jordan may have planned the murder and intended to blame someone else. On the second day of the hearing, prosecutors gathered evidence that undermined Jordan's defense strategy. During the trial, a video of the police interrogations was shown, revealing to the jury how she lied to the police sergeant. She also deceived her own sixth brother, who testified that during the search, he cried and begged her to tell the truth, but she lied again. On December 13, 2013, just 4 days after the trial began, Jordan's defense announced that she entered the courthouse as a free woman and left in handcuffs. She surprised everyone by changing her plea to second-degree murder. Jordan stood before the judge and admitted the truth about what happened in Glacier National Park. She said at the time she wasn't considering the consequences and recklessly pushed Cody. When she pleaded guilty, Cody's mother began to cry. Contrary, her parents remained silent throughout the trial and left the courthouse quietly at the end, leaving their daughter in the custody of the U.S. Marshals. As a result of her guilty plea, Jordan Graham was sentenced to 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole. In exchange, prosecutors dropped the first-degree murder charge and 1 count of perjury. Jordan filed an appeal to withdraw her guilty plea on March 26, 2014, but the appeal was denied. After everything ended, Cody's friends tried to make sense of what truly happened. They insisted that, despite any anger or frustration Cody felt towards Jordan, but he loved her. He would be willing to end the marriage if it would make Jordan happy. No one could figure out why Jordan killed her husband. She came from a religious family with strict rules, and perhaps in her youth, she made some mistakes and feared confessing to her husband. Alternatively, due to her parental upbringing, she may not be ready for a marital relationship, leading to psychological trauma and shyness towards men. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Andres Mendoza. On May 14, 2021, 34 years old Reina Amador went missing. She was last seen north of Atizapán de Zaragoza in the state of Mexico. Before her disappearance, she had informed her husband Bruno that she was going to Zocalo Square in the historic center to buy mobile phone parts. She was accompanied by family friend Andres Mendoza, a 74-year-old man, whom she had known for many years. When Bruno returned home at 8 p.m., Reina had not yet come back, and only 2 of their daughters were at home. He tried calling but she didn't answer. At 11 p.m., Bruno went to Andres's house to inquire about her, but Andres said he had no information about Reina and had not seen her all day. As a former police chief, Bruno immediately decided to report his wife missing and went to the police station to file a report. No one expected this case would become one of the most notorious and tragic in Mexico. On Saturday, May 15, Bruno asked to see the security camera footage. The recording showed his wife, Reina, walking down the street where Andres lived, but she never left Andres's house. This was the last time she was seen, at 8:40 p.m. Bruno went back to Andres's house, accompanied by his brother-in-law. They knocked on the door, but Andres insisted he knew nothing about Reina. Bruno asked him to open the door to ask a few questions. He opened the door slightly, and then Bruno forced his way inside. He said that Bruno wouldn't find anything there, but Bruno sensed that something was off. The lights were off, and everything in the house seemed normal at first. However, Bruno discovered cardboard boxes in Andres's room. His intuition told him to move the boxes, and underneath was an entrance to the basement. There, he was shocked to find body parts in several buckets. On the dining table, there were also remains, including a face and scalp that had been separated from the skull. Upon closer inspection, Bruno finds Reina's belongings and realizes that the remains are hers. As all this was happening, Andres attempted to escape. He rushed out of the house, but was quickly apprehended, prompting Bruno to call the police. 2 police squads, located nearby, quickly arrived at the scene. Confused neighbors, not understanding why Andres was being handcuffed, tried to assist him. The officers brought him back inside and seated him on a chair. Bruno questioned Andres about his actions. One police officer contacted the prosecutor's office, as a search warrant was necessary. During the investigation, a dismembered body was discovered, and authorities suspected there might be more victims. This incident quickly became a hot topic nationwide. Friends and acquaintances of Andres were shocked. They insisted he was a calm and peaceful individual, even serving as the president of his neighborhood civil council. When police executed a search warrant at Andres's home, they involved specialists from various fields, including criminologists, anthropologists, doctors, and forensic experts. They focused on the room with access to the basement. In addition to the bed, there were other items in the room, such as clothes, a wardrobe, and a few photographs. When police went down to the basement, they discovered the dismembered body of a woman, with her feet resting on a chair. Nearby, they found knives, a saw, and a machete. On a table, there were severed limbs in a pool of blood. Additionally, plastic containers held body parts and organs, with some preserved in salt. The remains of a face and scalp, with the hair removed, were also located in the basement. Initially, investigators think there is only one victim, but they uncovered more evidence, including 12 cell phones, 12 SIM cards, cosmetics, women's clothing, wallets, shoes, necklaces, and various women's accessories. Several videotapes and several notebooks with gruesome notes were found, including list of women. In addition, the police also recovered 9 sets of keys, 2 scales, election documents, and more than a dozen photos of the victims. The most alarming discovery was the well-preserved faces and scalps, with hair removed. This evidence led police to suspect they were dealing with a serial killer. Andres was then taken to Barrientos prison, where he was held before his trial. He expressed a desire to tell the truth and confessed to killing Reina. She worked at a cell phone store just a short distance from Andres's house. He often visited her at work and helped her out, leading many neighbors to believe they were related, with some even spreading rumors that he was her uncle. On the day she disappeared, they had arranged to meet and buy supplies for Reina's business, as they had done previously, which made her trust him. At 5 o'clock in the morning, she told her husband Bruno that she was going shopping with Andres. According to Andres's testimony, Reina came to his house and they began to argue. He said he loved she and asked her to have sex with him, which led to an argument. When she refused, he took a knife and cut her neck. After she fell to the floor, he began to beat her. Although she was still alive, he stabbed her in the chest multiple times. After killing her, he dismembered her body and put it in boxes to take to the basement. In the basement, he removed the face from the skull, stating it was so beautiful that he wanted to keep it forever. He soaked the remains in salt to prevent flies from appearing. This is something he admitted to. He also said that he buried 4 other women in the basement. However, notes in his notebook and photos show something else. One of Andres's handwritten notes, dated December 17, 1974, described one of his victims who lived on Colonia Hank Gonzalez Street in Ecatepec. According to the note, she went to another world at 5 a.m. The note detailed the weights of various body parts. The head weighed 4.5 kilograms, the chest 1.5 kilograms, each rib and the right arm 14 kilograms, and the pancreas, liver, and heart weighed 4 kilograms. This victim was 28 years old. The gruesome details left a deep impression on investigators, who had no idea how significant this case would become. In addition, at the crime scene, the police discovered a videotape that Andres had filmed, recording each murder. Many people could not understand his thinking. For numerous investigators, this case was the most horrifying they had ever encountered. The developments of the incident were unbelievable, like a horror movie. A few days later, the police began dismantling the foundation of the building to check if there were really graves in the basement. Civilian experts joined the police to assist in the excavation, continuing to search for remains and related evidence. Initially, excavation began in the backyard near the kitchen, where numerous bones were discovered. Diggings then continued in the main room measuring 30 square meters, believed to be the entrance to the basement. During this process, several skulls and bones were found. A report indicated the discovery of 1,137 bone fragments, belonging to at least 4 individuals. The investigation is still ongoing every day, and experts are surprised by the new findings. During this time, Andres confessed to occasionally consuming parts of his victims' bodies. This has led to rumors that he was involved in cannibalism, which has alarmed neighbors. They recalled that Andres had previously sold meat, which explains how he was able to meticulously cut up the bodies of his victims. Neighbors said that after the butcher shop closed, Andres would occasionally go from house to house in the area selling meat, allegedly sourced from Iztapalapa. They began to suspect that he was lying and was actually selling the victims' meat. They noted that he sold this meat at unusually low prices and often gave them more meat than they asked for. Andres was born in Oaxaca on November 29, 1947. Neighbors recalled that he moved to Atizapan in the 1980s. He lived in the same house as his sister, who asked him to collect rent from the tenants. He was known for being calm and reserved. 9 years before the investigation began, He opened a butcher shop, which allowed him to meet many people, including politicians. He served as the president of the Civil Council of Atizapan and was a member of a political party. He was generous and caring to the residents of the area. He often visited people's homes to understand their needs. Neighbors viewed him as a role model, and no one suspected him. There was another perspective to consider. Some people described Andres as depraved and having an unpleasant appearance. He frequently visited women's homes, saying he wanted to help them, but often had more intimate intentions. He was known as an older man who spent time in bars, drinking and socializing with women. In the building where he lived, one room was rented to a couple with a small child, and another to a doctor. None of them noticed anything suspicious about him. Among the documents found in the building was a file for Norma Jimenez, who had been missing since August 6, 2011. She has light brown skin, a healthy figure, wide hips, a bruise on her right cheek, and a vertical scar on her abdomen from surgery. She was 39 years old when she went missing. On the day Norma disappeared, she went to work as usual in Barragán, from 2:00 p.m. to 10:00 p.m. At around 10:15 p.m., she called her family to say she was on her way home. Unfortunately, she never came home. The reason was that Andres invited her to his house, promising a good payment. Instead, he stabbed her in the heart, dismembered her body, and buried the remains in his backyard. Another of his victims was a 20-year-old woman who worked at the Marina bar. She was similar in appearance to Norma and was also short. She was last seen leaving her home on April 7, 2012. Andres stated that in the same year, he met two girls named Adrenaline and Gardenia, who also worked at the Barragán bar. He confessed that he took them to his home, and when they refused to have sex with him, he killed them and buried their bodies in the basement. In 2016, Flor Vizcaíno, a 38-year-old woman, left her home and never came back. She disappeared on October 16, and since then, there has been no information about her. It was only when police searched Andres's home that they found her papers. Flor was a mother of two teenage daughters and worked as a waitress. She was divorced and her daughters were staying with their father that weekend. She left home at 11 a.m. and sent messages to her daughters on Facebook that same day. As hours went by without her return, her family reported her missing. Flor's portraits were posted on social media, but nothing came of it. At work, she met Andres, who often invited her to lunch and gave her gifts. However, she refused to start a relationship with him, and this is believed to be the reason he killed her. At Andres's home, documents belonging to Rubichelli Gegos, 32, were found. She went missing on July 20, 2019, and was last seen at a restaurant, a moment that was captured on a security camera. She had a 5-year-old son, and she working at a bank. In her free time, she works as a delivery person for the Uber food delivery service. That day, despite having the day off, she decided to make deliveries to earn extra money. Her family became concerned when she did not meet her older sister at the airport as planned. When her sister went to her apartment, her sister found only her son, who had been left alone for 5 days in a locked apartment. The missing report of Rubichelli was filed on July 27. Her motorcycle was later found in the Shang Aviar area, but there were no signs that she had been there. Andres chose attractive women as his targets. If they rejected him, he would lure them to his home, claiming he wanted to help them. When they arrived, he would gain their trust first, then secretly pull out a knife and stab them in the heart and neck. Once they stopped moving, he would dismember them. Because the women were beautiful, he removed their faces and scalps to keep them. He also cut up parts of their bodies to eat later, using his skills as a butcher. The remaining parts were soaked in salt and buried in various locations around his house, such as the kitchen, backyard, or basement. He covered the graves with a thick layer of cement to mask the smell. After weeks of investigation, the police discovered 3,787 skeletons. Forensic experts said the skeletons belonged to at least 17 people. The police then began reviewing 600 folders related to missing persons cases from Oaxaca and nearby areas over the last 31 years. The skeletons that were found underwent a thorough cleaning process, after which it was possible to determine which parts of the body they belonged to, allowing an approximate number of victims to be established. While the investigation was ongoing, Andres was transferred from Barrientos prison to Guadalbaya prison due to threats from other inmates who wanted to kill him for his crimes. Several days later, relatives of one of the missing women approached police to provide their DNA samples to compare with the DNA from the remains found. On December 2, 2017, March Duranta, 33, left her home, a few blocks away from Andres's home, at 8:00 a.m. She went to a bank branch to make some transfers and took public transportation that went to the El Campanario area. That day, her eldest son, who was 15, called her twice, and she answered him, also giving her location. However, she then stopped answering his calls. A few hours later, when she did not return home, her husband and 3 children visited the police to report her disappearance. Since that day, they have not known anything. Marta had met Andres a few months earlier. He had offered her a job as a cleaner at the Civic Council office. When her family learned of her disappearance, they feared the worst, believing she had fallen victim to Andres. Among Andres's victims were Maria Maris and her 7-year-old son, Edgar. They went missing on December 24, 2014. Since that day, neighbors had not seen them. Her sister Matilda explained that she was a single mother who sold candy from a cart with her son. Andres had offered to let her keep the cart at his house. The day Maria and her son went missing, they left home and told their family that they would not be going far. Hours later, the family started searching for them in the streets. The family gathered information from people living in the area, and only one person had seen them on the day of their disappearance. That person was Andres. He even offered to go with Matilda to the police so report Maria and Edgar missing. One of the neighbors who ran a grocery store recalled that a few years ago, Andres had offered her tickets to a local festival and convinced her to go. Another neighbor remembered that Andres promised to buy her a cell phone if she visited him, but she declined. In total, 4,300 skeletons were found, including 18 women and 1 child. This figure was released after the completion of excavations at the crime scene. These skeletons allowed investigators to identify 19 victims. Experts conducted extraction, purification, quantitative assessments, and typing to create genetic profiles for the victims. This genetic material was then compared with DNA samples from at least 11 families. The analysis resulted in matches for 6 cases, identifying at least 6 victims, while 13 other victims still await identification. Investigations continue, and the police are searching another house owned by Andres for additional victims. On March 18, 2022, Andres Mendoza was sentenced to life in prison. In Reina Amador's case, he also had to pay more than $50,000 in compensation to her family. Although 19 victims' remains have been found, it is believed there may be more, as Andres claimed to have killed at least 30 women. It is important to remember that serial killers often act normally so as not to arouse suspicion. They can easily gain people's trust, are often well-liked, and hide their true nature behind a friendly facade. Stay vigilant. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of Bradley Robert Edwards. The city of Claremont is currently facing a crisis due to a serial killer targeting women, causing fear even among local street dogs. A man, around 50 years old and noticeably out of shape, entered the courtroom. After a long time, one trait remained unchanged: his ability to conceal his emotions. His name is Bradley Robert Edwards, and yet, People preferred his newspaper nickname much more, the Killer from Claremont. Edwards is a wealthy suburb of Perth, the capital of Western Australia. The community lived in fear after at least 3 girls vanished without a trace. In response to these disappearances, Edwards faced a 7-month trial in 2012. The trial included around 240 witnesses and analyzed over 1,000 pieces of evidence. According to the Australian justice system, this investigation was one of the most complex, extensive, costly, and protracted in the country's history. It not only revealed the horrific crimes committed against the victims, but also shed light on the background of the Claremont killer, which contributed to his twisted behavior. Bradley Robert Edwards was born on December 7, 1968, in Australia. Little is known about his childhood, but some sources indicate that he attended elementary school in a town called Nungdale during the 1970s. After that, he went to high school and later worked for a communications company until 2016. Edwards also served as a timekeeper for a company that organized children's track and field events. He was often considered strange by those around him, as he openly discussed his unusual fantasies. There were also rumors that he stole women's underwear from dryers in nearby houses. Even while living with his parents, some teenagers claimed he had a collection of women's underwear at home. As time went on, Edwards developed an interest in wearing women's clothing, identifying as heterosexual. This may have been a fetish that led to a series of criminal and inappropriate actions towards girls. In February 1988, when he was just over 19 years old, he committed his first known attack. The victim was an 18-year-old girl who was sleeping in her parents' house. She had only a slight acquaintance with Edwards, as their previous interactions had not been very close. In fact, she was the sister of a young man who had attended high school with Edwards. The girl woke up in the middle of the night and immediately sensed someone sitting next to her. At first, she thought it might be the guy she had celebrated All Saints' Day with just a few hours earlier. However, she quickly realized that was not the case. Before she could make a sound, Edwards covered her mouth with his hand. The girl hurried to calm the intruder. She thinks that the person who broke into her room was her boyfriend. It seemed that he covered her mouth only so that she would not scream in fear and thus not wake up her parents. Unfortunately, she was mistaken. Edwards pulled her head back and attempted to cover her face with a rag. In that moment, the girl told him that she loved him, which momentarily startled Edwards. The girl reached out to touch the face of the person lying next to her, only to be slapped by him. It was at that moment she realized the person was not her boyfriend, but an intruder. In a panic, she fought back, scratching Edward's skin, which caused him to pull away. He quickly got off the bed and stood near the entrance of the room, wearing only a shirt. Realizing she was in danger, the girl began banging on the wall and screaming for her parents to wake up and help her. Fortunately, her cries frightened Edwards, and he fled, leaving behind a shirt that resembled a kimono and some evidence of his presence. This evidence became crucial in a major investigation that followed. Years later, Edwards's life had changed significantly. He met a girl by chance at a music festival in northern Western Australia. After their meeting, she ended her strong relationship with her boyfriend to be with Edwards, and eventually, Edwards moved in with her. The girl, whose name is not revealed, described her and Edwards's life as typical and rural. They owned several dogs and one horse. Each day, Edwards would drive her to work in his van before starting his own job. Occasionally, they would visit friends at a nearby farm for dinner or a barbecue. Overall, their life was unremarkable. As time passed, they began to consider marriage, with Edwards being just 22 years old at the time. It seemed that the idea of marriage was mostly pushed by his girlfriend, while he did not express much eagerness to take that step. One day, She started asking him questions about his intentions regarding marriage, which unhappy him. The following day, while working on a telephone connection at a local hospital, Edwards attacked a social worker. He approached her from behind and dragged her into a restroom. The victim fought back and managed to push him away. After that, he seemed to snap back to reality, standing next to her with a vacant stare. Although the victim escaped, the psychological impact of the attack had a lasting effect on her life. Later, after recognizing the attacker as an employee of a local telecommunications company, she reported him to his superiors. Surprisingly, instead of being fired, Edwards was promoted. Although this promotion occurred sometime later, it was clear that Edwards' employer supported him. His boss described him as a good worker who likely lost his temper due to personal issues. Edwards admitted his wrongdoing and promised to seek professional help. However, he was still convicted, though the charge was only for simple assault, which the victim strongly opposed. Until February 1995, Edwards' assaults did not appear to involve sexual violence. They mostly consisted of physical aggression and did not result in serious consequences, but they still affected the victims' lives. Meanwhile, his relationship with his common-law wife deteriorated over time. This likely happened because he chose to spend his free time on the computer instead of with her. According to her, Edwards eventually became emotionally distant, leading to the end of their cohabitation and relationship. On the morning of February 12, Edwards committed another attack. This time, he kidnapped a 17-year-old woman who was walking in one of the parks in Claremont. Reports indicate that the victim had just left a nightclub and was heading to her friend's house when she entered a poorly lit path leading to park. Edwards grabbed her from behind and forced her into his work van. He told her to be quiet, but at times, it seemed she was too terrified to move. As he put her in the van, he covered her head with a canvas bag and tied her ankles with makeshift handcuffs before driving toward the cemetery. There, he acted out his violent fantasies. During this ordeal, the girl was so shocked that she couldn't make a sound. She was in disbelief that this was happening to her. When it was over, Edwards discarded her in the bushes and calmly left the scene. Once she realized he was gone, the victim opened her eyes and rushed to the nearest hospital for help. Almost a year later, on January 27, 1996, an 18-year-old secretary named Sarah Spears also went missing. She disappeared from a similar area after leaving a nightclub around 2:00 a.m. 6 minutes later, she attempted to call a taxi from a phone booth. Although Sarah lived in the south of Perth with her older sister, she gave a different address when calling for the taxi. By the time the car arrived, she was nowhere to be found, or possibly because the driver did not see her in the dark. Witnesses reported hearing loud screams on the night Sarah went missing in the area where she could have been. They also noted seeing an unusual van parked nearby, but no significant leads were found. Sarah grew up in rural Western Australia, where her father, Don, worked primarily as a sheep shearer, a common occupation in the area. Sarah attended a boarding school in Perth and later took secretarial courses, eventually securing a job at a consulting company. Before her disappearance, she lived with her older sister, and they shared a close bond. Her family described her as cautious, which made it surprising that she chose to leave the nightclub alone. Around the same time Sarah disappeared, Edwards' relationship with his girlfriend was on the verge of ending. She had started seeing another man and may have even fallen in love with him. Initially, they were just friends and spent time together occasionally, but their relationship quickly evolved, prompting Edwards and his girlfriend to break up. They had shared responsibilities, including pets, a mortgage, and a car loan. A few months after their separation, Edwards' ex-girlfriend called to inform him that she was pregnant. It's unclear how he felt about this news, as he did not express any visible emotions. On June 9, 1996, another victim of Edwards went missing. This occurred around the time he learned that his ex-girlfriend was pregnant. The missing person was a 20-year-old nanny named Jane Rimmer. Before her disappearance, Jane had been out with friends, starting at a hotel called The Beach, then moving to the Hotel Continental, and finally heading to a nightclub. However, when they arrived at the nightclub, there was a long line at the entrance. Jane's friends decided to leave and called a taxi to go home, but she wanted to stay. The last known footage of Jane was captured by surveillance cameras at the Hotel Continental, where she was seen talking for several minutes to a dark-haired man who was facing away from the camera. Jane lived in an apartment in the western suburbs of Perth. Her mother reported that Jane had planned to have lunch with her the next day. According to her mother, it was unusual for Jane to miss such plans, especially since she typically came over to do her laundry around that time, which was part of her routine. Jane's relatives spoke with the police, described her as a cheerful, sociable, and friendly person. They mentioned that she enjoyed surfing and frequently visited the beach. Jane also loved children, which may explain why she took a job at a childcare services company after finishing school. Following her disappearance, police searched her home for clues, but they found nothing significant. After some time, local authorities established a special task force called the Macro Police to investigate two cases simultaneously. The first case involved the mysterious disappearance of Sarah on August 3, 1996. More than 50 days after Jane went missing, her remains were discovered by local citizens who were picking wildflowers about 40 kilometers from where she was believed to have been abducted. The remains were only partially covered by branches, likely torn from a nearby tree. Reports indicate that Jane had a neck wound and several superficial injuries on her wrists. At this time, Sarah was still reported missing. In the early morning of March 15, 1997, a 27-year-old lawyer named Kiara Glennon also disappeared. The day before her disappearance, she had been on vacation with friends at the Continental Hotel, but chose to return home earlier than the others. 3 men near the bus stop reported seeing Kiara around 12:30 a.m. They noticed her walking south along the Steer Highway while talking to a man driving in a car beside her. Just weeks earlier, Sierra had celebrated her 27th birthday after returning from a year-long trip around the world. Back in Australia, she stayed at her family's home. Kiara was born in Zambia, but her parents, of Irish descent, moved to Perth when she was young. She studied ballet passionately until adulthood. In 1992, she graduated from the University of Western Australia with degrees in law and Japanese language. Soon after, she completed an internship at a large law firm and continued working there until her departure. Relatives and friends of Kiara described her as an energetic, resourceful, persistent, and strong-willed girl, highlighting her wonderful sense of humor. After she went missing, law enforcement agencies began to suspect the involvement of a serial killer. The Western Australian state government offered a $250,000 reward for information leading to the identification of the criminal, marking it as the largest reward ever offered in the country. Meanwhile, detectives searched Ciara's room for evidence, but most items were related to her sister's upcoming wedding. 19 days after Kiara's disappearance, on April 3, 1997, her body was found by accident in a park, located several kilometers from where she was believed to have been abducted. Similar to Jane, Ciara had a knife wound in her neck, and her body was partially covered with branches. Notably, the murders of Jane and Ciara occurred while Edwards was with his future partner, a woman with a 3-year-old daughter. He met she in April 1997 when he went to her workplace to fix lightning-damaged wiring. Edwards surprised everyone by admitting his love for his new girlfriend within just a month of their first meeting. Since that time, their relationship has been progressing quickly. In a home video that was later obtained by the authorities, Edwards appeared joyful as he played tennis with her young stepdaughter, he offering little girl helpful advice during the game. Furthermore, it was reported that he frequently organized picnics in parks, hosted guests, and lived an otherwise normal life. According to Edwards' new partner, perhaps the infidelity of his previous partner had hurt his feelings greatly. The police focused their investigation on taxi drivers for a few reasons. First, the victims were last seen trying to use taxi services, which led authorities to this theory. Second, some witnesses reported seeing a car near the locations where the abductions took place, suggesting a possible connection. Despite conducting extensive DNA and fingerprint tests on numerous taxi drivers, these efforts did not yield any results. By April of the following year, investigators identified a main suspect, a 40-year-old civil servant named Lance Williams, who was frequently seen driving in the area of the abductions. However, after a lengthy period of surveillance and questioning by police, Lance never confessed to involvement in any of the cases. By 2008, after numerous interrogations, authorities concluded that he was no longer a suspect. One person initially considered a suspect was Bradley Murdoch, but he was later ruled out. Interestingly, at the height of the investigation, a special task force of over 100 police officers from different departments was involved. Despite their numbers, the task force did not achieve significant results and was nearly completely disbanded. Following this, the department focused on investigating serious crimes took over the case. The first significant breakthrough came in 2009 when a DNA match was found. Forensic officer George Payton and senior researcher Lowry Webb managed to extract DNA from the decomposed remains of Ciara and sent it to the UK for testing. Although similar tests had been done in Australia and New Zealand before, they had not yielded any noteworthy findings. Police officers continued to search for clues. In one UK laboratory, a special testing technique was used. This technique not available in Australia, it could obtain results from even the smallest tissue samples. Later, specialists in Australia compared the DNA obtained from the samples to their database. They found a match with the DNA of a person who had committed crimes against a 17-year-old girl in a city cemetery in 1995. This finding led authorities to conclude that all these crimes were committed by the same individual. However, the understanding of the crime in Western Australia only evolved in 2015, when police confirmed the connections between the cemetery crime, the murder of Jane, Ciara, and an attack on an 18-year-old in his own room in 1988. It's important to note that during this earlier crime, Edwards accidentally left behind a nightgown containing his biological material. In the early morning of December 22, 2016, officers from the Western Australia State Police Tactical Response Unit entered the home of Edwards and took him. When they handcuffed him, his first reaction was, "What the hell is going on here?" The officers quickly informed him that he was a suspect in the Claremont serial killer case. In disbelief, he responded, "You've got to be kidding." As they read him his rights, he expressed confusion about why they thought he was connected to the case. Indeed, up to this point, Edwards had led a rather quiet and calm life. His social media profiles indicated that he and his common-law wife had been active volunteers, and he had even received an award from the city for his community service. He had crafted an image of a normal person, but whether he really was one is another question. The next day, Edwards was taken into custody. Formal charges were brought against him. Some of these charges included aggravated murder, kidnapping, indecent exposure, and sexual assault. Meanwhile, police began a thorough search of the house where Edwards had lived for several years. The evidence found in the garage was so disturbing that much of it could not be presented in a public trial. This evidence included various illegal pornographic materials, homemade sex toys, bags containing his genetic material secured with hair ties, and a large collection of women's underwear with openings for male genitalia. One notable discovery was a series of documents or stories. The first was titled The Story of Chloe, the second was Sophie, and the third was Nicole. All these stories shared a common theme: a man kidnapped victims. It was unclear whether he had written the stories himself or downloaded them from the internet. In late October 2019, Edwards pleaded guilty to 5 out of the 8 charges against him. Meanwhile, Edwards denied the murder charge, claiming he had no involvement in the crimes. The main trial, led by Chief Justice Stephen Hall, began on November 25, 2019, at the prosecution's request. It was conducted without a jury due to significant public interest and the abundance of unique evidence. Approximately 240 witnesses testified during the trial, which lasted for 7 months. Throughout this time, Edwards chose to remain silent and did not provide any comments. He also declined to undergo a psychiatric evaluation that could have shed light on his motivations for committing such horrific acts. One of the key pieces of evidence came from the fabric fibers found on the victims' bodies during a thorough police investigation. A total of 98 fibers were collected, most of which matched the polypropylene fibers from the work uniform of Edwards. This uniform was custom-made for the company where he was employed, indicating that it couldn't have been purchased at a local store. Additionally, polypropylene fibers were discovered in Kiara's hair, and their composition and color perfectly matched the carpet in Edwards's work vehicle. He worked as a technician at a local telecommunications company, which meant he frequently drove a company car, a Holden Commodore executive station wagon with the Telstra company logo. He used this vehicle even outside of work hours. Witnesses, including a security guard from the cemetery, reported seeing this van parked near the cemetery without any apparent reason, this confirming it was the same car used by Edwards to abduct girls. Before that, the authorities were able to narrow down their list of suspects and track down the wanted criminal thanks to a relatively rare car. They might have made progress sooner, but they lacked crucial evidence, such as suspects' DNA. By September 2020, Edwards was convicted of the murders of Jane and Sierra, but he was found not guilty of the murder of Sarah Spears, resulting in no conviction for Sarah case. The sentencing was initially scheduled for December of the same year. Around that time, a woman who had been attacked in her bedroom in 1988 testified in court. She explained that she didn't see herself as a victim because she had survived the attack. However, she shared that since then, she has felt a constant fear every night, especially before going to bed, worrying that someone might attack her while she sleeps. The woman testified in court that she had been experiencing seizures, panic attacks, and sudden anxiety for a long time, and her mental health continued to decline. Another victim, who was kidnapped by Edwards and assaulted in a cemetery, stated that he robbed her of her youth. She found it difficult to articulate the profound effects this horrific experience had on her life. A third victim, who was assaulted in a city hospital, learned about Edwards' arrest when law enforcement contacted her. They informed her that the man who attacked her was a serial killer, which left her in shock. However, unlike many other victims, she was able to speak publicly about her experience and even wrote a book about it. Edwards' first common law wife's partner also commented on the arrest, but he chose to remain anonymous. He expressed doubts about being the father of his daughter due to the recent events. Edwards' second partner testified in court. She revealed that she began to question Edwards' honesty in the early 2000s. This prompted her to check his bank accounts, where she found that he was withdrawing between $300 and $400 every few days. She noted that she and Edwards lived modestly and often faced financial struggles. Meanwhile, Edwards's relatives defended him vigorously. His nephew, Adam Edwards, portrayed him as a generous, straightforward, and approachable person, insisting that he could not possibly be a serial killer. On December 23, 2020, Bradley Robert Edwards was sentenced to life in prison with a 40-year probation period. This sentence was unprecedented and marked the longest in Western Australia's history. When Supreme Court Justice Stephen Hall announced the verdict, applause erupted in the courtroom. The judge noted that although there were aggravating factors for each crime, there was not enough evidence to prove that Edwards posed a continuous threat to others. Interestingly, Edwards's legal team had until February 3, 2021, to appeal the decision and argue for his innocence, but they never did. The local police commissioner remarked to news agencies that the court had imprisoned one of the country's most dangerous criminals. He expressed hope that Edwards would spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of release. Additionally, he mentioned that he would continue to seek justice for another victim, Sarah Spears. The case against Edwards is considered one of the most expensive and lengthy criminal trials in Western Australia. By September 2020, its total cost had surpassed $11 million. Authorities also had to spend a substantial amount on providing the legally required defense services for the accused. Significant funds were allocated for the prosecution as well. The prosecution team consisted of 4 prosecutors and 5 state lawyers. Additionally, some witnesses and experts traveled to Australia from other countries. The prosecution compiled over 150 volumes, which included reports of their work and organized evidence of Edwards' crimes. Law enforcement officers established a comprehensive database containing various documents and case materials, totaling several thousand gigabytes. Additionally, civilians took part in their own investigations, including journalist Liam Bartlett. He believes that Edwards may have had many more victims. Among them, one potential victim is a 22-year-old woman named Julie Cutler, who vanished without a trace in June 1988 after leaving a hotel. There were other girls who also disappeared under similar circumstances, but currently, there is no information available about those cases. The conclusion of the Bradley Robert Edwards case, the Claremont serial killings, left a painful mark on Western Australia's crime history. Thanks to the efforts of forensic officers, researchers in the community were instrumental in solving the case and bringing justice to the victims. Edwards, whose brutality and involvement in the murder of Jane Rimmer and Kiara Glennon, was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. However, there are still unfortunate victims who have not found justice. This case reminds us of the need to uphold the law and fight to prevent similar crimes in the future. Welcome back to our channel. Today we will explore a new case, the case of Andrew Bagby and Zachary Turner. This case is a deeply tragic and complex story that highlights the dark intersections of love and betrayal. A harrowing tale of violence, the failure of the justice system. The murder of Andrew Bagby, a promising young doctor, but his life ended tragically. What follows is custody battles and the tragic consequences of delay resolution, legal. Kathleen and David Bagby first met in the 196 at Disneyland while hanging out with mutual friends. At that time, David was serving in the U.S. Marine Corps. He was intelligent, charming, and sociable, which immediately drew Kathleen to him. They connected quickly and spent the entire trip talking, becoming inseparable soon after. Within 5 months of meeting, they got married. They settled in San Diego, California, where Kathleen became a nurse, while David transitioned to a career as a software engineer after his military service. They both dreamed of having children, but at that time, planning a family is difficult. Despite that, Kathleen eventually became pregnant. which was a joyful surprise for them. The arrival of their son, Andrew, was a wonderful event. Later, the family of three moved to the suburbs of San Jose. Andrew was friendly and sociable from a young age, a trait he inherited from his parents. He received several awards that highlighted his hard work and dedication. His best friend, Kurt Quenney, had been by his side since elementary school, and together they enjoyed making funny videos. Andrew valued family time and always prioritized being with his loved ones. When he started college, he began dating Heather, a girl in his classes. Inspired by his mother, he aspired to pursue a career in medicine, which allowed him to bond with her over shared discussions about the field. Their family was harmonious and served as a model for others. After graduating from college, Andrew applied to multiple medical universities, but was only accepted by one, which was a significant disappointment. He decided to reapply the following year and planned to work in the meantime to avoid burdening his parents. Just days after receiving the rejection letters, his mother discovered a misplaced acceptance letter from Memorial University of Newfoundland in Canada. This news changed Andrew's life dramatically. In 1995, he moved to St. John's, Canada, to attend the university. The following year, Heather also relocated to join him and enrolled in the same institution. However, Andrew's with her relationship began to deteriorate after a few months. His girlfriend unexpectedly ended their engagement without providing any explanation. To forget the pain, Andrew focused intensely on his studies. This continued until his third year, in the spring of 1999, when he met a woman named Shirley. This marked his first relationship after his breakup with Heather. Initially, this news was received very positively by everyone, especially his family and friends, as they were afraid that Andrew would not have the desire to build a relationship after breaking up with his fiancée. However, the joy was short-lived. Shirley was significantly older than Andrew. He was 26, while she was already 38. This age difference led to some misunderstandings between them. Shirley had graduated from Memorial University and worked as a teacher for many years. However, in the mid-90s, she decided to return to school to pursue a medical degree. She graduated in 1998 and began working as a resident in various hospitals. By this time, she had developed a questionable reputation. She was frequently accused of mistreating patients and being overly confrontational. One of her supervisors even noted in a performance review that he felt she was trying to manipulate him during their interactions. Additionally, she had been caught lying multiple times, which often resulted in conflicts. From the moment they met, Shirley became very controlling of Andrew. She followed him everywhere. His friends saw as excessively affectionate behavior. She would often hug him, touch him inappropriately, and talk openly about their active sex life, which shocked Andrew and his friends. When Shirley learned about Andrew's ex-fiancée, a beautiful girl named Heather, she became upset and started crying. Not only that, Shirley called other girls to boast about her relationship with Andrew. This led to her being perceived as inadequate. Andrew's friends and family did not like her. They often suggested that Andrew could find someone better, considering his calm demeanor and good looks. However, after his breakup with Heather, Andrew's self-esteem plummeted. He convinced himself that Shirley was the best person he could meet and that he shouldn't expect more. His loved ones could only wait and hope that their relationship would eventually end. After graduating from university in 2000, Andrew moved to Syracuse, New York, to start a job at a medical center. At the same time, Shirley relocated to Sac City, Iowa, a small town with a population of about 2,000, where she signed a 10-year contract to work at the county medical center. Andrew's family was relieved that he and Shirley had moved away from each other. However, Shirley was determined to keep their relationship alive, frequently reaching out to Andrew. Andrew was busy with work and rarely had time to visit her, but Shirley made regular trips to see him. During the time apart, she often called him on his home or mobile phone. One day, Shirley visited Andrew and stayed until he had to leave for work. After they said goodbye, she called him to say she had forgotten her purse at his apartment. Andrew gave her his keys, but when he returned home after his shift, he found that many more items were missing than just her purse. This raised suspicions about Shirley's honesty. Despite feeling betrayed, Andrew thought he didn't deserve better and chose to stay in the relationship. Andrew quickly realized that he didn't like his new job and home, so about a year later, he moved to the small cozy town of Trop, Pennsylvania, which had a population of 88,000. In 2001, he decided to pursue a career in family medicine, and this town seemed perfect for it. The close-knit community appealed to him. Andrew imagined himself as a doctor and a true savior for such a small town where everyone would know, love, and respect him. His dream was starting to come true, but then there was Shirley. She still wanted to be with him. However, by this point, Andrew was tired of their obsessive relationship and had fully focused on his work, so he insisted on breaking up. It seemed like Shirley didn't understand what was happening and continued to hold on to the hope that she could move in with him. Andrew began to ignore her, which led Shirley to become a stalker, even leaving him 30 voice messages a day. Despite his determination to end the relationship, in September 2001, Shirley informed him that she was pregnant and that he was the father. Andrew was happy about becoming a father, but did not want to be tied to such an intrusive woman. Whenever he spoke to a new girl, Shirley would find out and reach out to her, claiming that she was pregnant with Andrew's child. Unsurprisingly, these new relationships never lasted. During this time, Shirley was busy sharing the news about her pregnancy and claiming that Andrew would be a father. Initially, she considered having an abortion, but then decided to keep the baby. Her manipulations succeeded, and a month later, Shirley convinced Andrew to rekindle their relationship. They even started talking about getting engaged. At the end of October 2001, a meeting was held with Andrew's friends and family. They all witnessed Shirley being forced to return to Quince. Andrew hoped that after this, he would be left alone. But on the morning of November 5, 2001, just 2 days later, Shirley knocked on his door. He was on his way to work and didn't want to talk to Shirley, but she persuaded him that they needed to have an important conversation, so he allowed her to stay in his apartment. He suggested they meet at Keystone Park at 6 p.m. to talk. After working at the hospital all day, Andrew felt anxious. His co-workers noticed his distress and asked what was wrong. He explained that Shirley had shown up at his home again. They advised him to end things with her as soon as possible and not to waste any more of his life. Andrew mentioned he planned to meet Shirley that evening to finally break off their relationship and hope to feel free. Andrew plans to meet his best friend Simpson at a bar at 9:00 p.m. to celebrate his escape from an obsessive relationship. Simpson arrived on time, but Andrew never showed up. This was unusual for him, as he had never been late or missed a meeting before. Concerned, Simpson thought Andrew might still be caught up in a conversation with Shirley. Simpson decided they could catch up in the morning at work, but when Andrew did not return calls from Simpson, his family, or his co-workers, by 9:00 a.m., Simpson considered contacting the police to check on Andrew, but was too busy to do so. A message appeared on television that in Keystone Park, the body of a man in a medical uniform had been found, identified as Andrew Bagby, 28 years old. A homeless person collecting cans discovered his body at 6:00 a.m., lying in a parking lot next to his car. Dr. Andrew had been attacked by force 5 times in the back, face, and chest, and it appeared he was dead with a final shot to the back of the head while on the ground. Simpson quickly informed the police, explaining that they wouldn't need to search for the suspect for long since he knew who Andrew had last met and had a conflict with. He described Shirley's troubling behavior and mentioned that Andrew had planned to meet her in the park that evening to end their relationship, which Shirley was adamantly against. The detectives found these details significant and promptly reached out to Shirley, who was already back in her hometown in Canada. Shirley claimed she had been in Iowa all day because she was sick and had gone to visit her parents. Of course, this was a lie. She had actually come to meet Andrew and had stayed at his apartment before their scheduled meeting in the park. By this time, the police had interviewed numerous friends, colleagues, and family members of Andrew. They all pointed to Shirley as the only person with whom he had a conflict. No one believed her story. The most crucial evidence came from a witness who identified Shirley's car, a Toyota RAV4, which was discovered in the same parking lot. However, the authorities decided not to rush into pressing charges against her. They intended to use the next 2 weeks to gather a strong foundation of evidence. All signs indicated Shirley's guilt, and her false statement was quickly disproven. Witnesses and security camera footage confirmed that she was near Andrew's house early in the morning and later met him in the park shortly before the incidents occurred. According to the investigation, a woman purchased a .22 caliber weapon and received safety training on it. During the training, the instructor noticed a problem that caused a live bullet to jam next to a fired casing. What a coincidence, because Andrew had been shot with the same weapon. Detectives attempted to examine the weapon for ballistic evidence, but they was unable to find any. Shirley claimed she spent the entire day on November 5 resting in her bed in Iowa. However, she was caught lying when security camera footage and phone call recordings revealed she was actually on her way to Andrew. She left behind a significant amount of digital evidence, as she frequently called her ex-boyfriend Andrew, attempting to persuade him to rekindle their relationship. When Shirley arrived at Andrew's apartment early that morning, he let her in and allowed her to stay until he finished his shift. During that time, a pack of condoms went missing from his home, while a package with matching numbers was later discovered in Shirley's house in Iowa, where she returned after the shooting incident. This further confirmed that she was clearly pretending, as she completely forgot the sequence of events. It's strange that Heather is also mentioned in this tragic event. Although she usually avoided meeting, Shirley still found a way to confront her. Shirley immediately claimed that Andrew loved her more, that their intimate life was better, and that their love after his death would forever remain in heaven. Heather was so frightened by this that she requested a restraining order against Shirley. Interestingly, after the funeral service, Shirley almost immediately got ready and headed to Canada to assist the authorities. Andrew's relatives planned another funeral service and invited Shirley, hoping to lure her to the U.S., but she declined. As a result, the American police had to work with Canadian, but authorities due to bureaucratic challenges, which slowed down the process. Meanwhile, Shirley continued to live freely. On December 12, 2001, Canadian police arrested Shirley, but discussions about her extradition had not yet started due to additional bureaucratic issues. It was expected that she would remain in prison until these matters were sorted out. Surprisingly, she was released on bail the next day. As part of her bail conditions, she was required to surrender her passport and report to the police station every week. Her psychiatrist even contributed to her bail payment. At the age of 40, Shirley had to avoid contact with 8 individuals who had restraining orders against her, including her ex-husband. Investigators found her anxiety concerning as they reviewed her background. Shirley had been married twice and had 2 children from her first marriage. She had an affair with a man who later became her second husband, and they had 1 child together before divorcing. In 1993, Shirley lived with a roommate who was troubled by how Shirley treated her children. The roommate reported that Shirley often physically abused them, using her hands and other nearby objects. Unable to bear it any longer, the roommate moved out and notified the authorities about Shirley's actions. Witnesses also stated that Shirley physically assaulted her children and would leave them home alone for more than a day. However, her second husband contested these accusations, claiming she was a good mother. As a result of the investigation, Shirley gave custody of her children to their biological fathers and continued her life. In March 1996, Shirley began a relationship with a St. John's resident, Miles Doucet, who was 13 years her junior. After Doucet broke up with Shirley and moved elsewhere in Newfoundland, she began calling him repeatedly. In November 1997, Shirley confronted him in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and struck him in the jaw with her high-heeled shoe. After consulting with her parents, Doucet moved to Westtown Township, Pennsylvania, United States, in 1998. Shirley tracked the man to Pennsylvania, leaving threatening voicemails over the next year and visiting his apartment unannounced. He summoned state police on several occasions to order her to leave. On April 7, 1999, Doucet found Shirley lying semi-conscious outside his apartment, having ingested a total of 65 milligrams of over-the-counter medication in an attempt to self-harm. She was wearing a black dress, holding a bouquet of red roses, and had 2 suicide notes on her person. One was addressed to Doucet and the other to her psychiatrist. The latter read, "I'm not evil, just sick." Shirley was taken to the hospital, where she underwent gastric lavage. Ultimately, the investigators was revealed that she hadn't attempted self-harm. Instead, this was yet effort to manipulate the circumstances surrounding Andrew's death. Although Shirley's actions appeared alarming, they were typical for her. Her sense of impunity, the sympathy she received, and her lack of proper treatment allowed her to systematically torment those close to her. This ultimately led to a violent outcome. Shortly after being released on bail, Shirley held a press conference where she announced that she was 4 months pregnant. Upon learning this, Andrew's parents, Kathleen and David, sold all their belongings, emptied their savings, and moved to Canada to fight for custody of the child. Although it was only possible to say for sure after the birth, they were certain that the boy was Andrew's. He was born on July 18, 2002, and Shirley named him Zachary. The DNA test later confirmed that Andrew was indeed his father. When Kathleen and David arrived at the hospital, Shirley refused to let them into the room, and they were not allowed to see their grandson. Given Shirley's behavior toward her other children, Andrew's parents were worried about Zachary's safety and were frustrated by the slow pace of the Canadian legal system. They felt powerless and feared for their grandson's well-being while he was with his mother. The extradition process to the U.S. faced continuous delays for various reasons. Ultimately, they were only granted 1 hour per week to meet with Zachary, and these visits had to be supervised, as if they posed a threat to the child. They were even subjected to searches. Despite these challenges, Zachary became a source of joy for they, who had lost their only child after years of waiting and hoped. In November 2002, things began to change. Shirley was imprisoned, and the extradition process to the U.S. started. She voluntarily transferred full custody of Zachary to Andrew's parents, but under specific conditions. Shirley could call them every day, and they were required to visit her in prison once a week. The grandparents took this responsibility seriously and never missed a visit to comply with the conditions. Despite the distance and bad weather, they strictly followed all of Shirley's requirements because they feared that this could become a reason for her discontent and revoke their custody rights. In January 2003, Shirley was released again. She had appealed directly to the judge overseeing her case, asking for advice on how to avoid prison before being extradited to the United States to care for her son. Surprisingly, the judge agreed to meet with her and provided detailed recommendations. Despite the absurdity of this situation, Shirley was released due to her compliance. Immediately after that, soon after, Kathleen and David lost custody of Zachary, but they were now allowed to spend significantly more time with Zachary, without interference from Shirley or a social worker. Although the Bagby family was unhappy with this arrangement, the judge insisted there was no reason to believe the child's life was in danger. This strange occurrence still happens, even though Shirley is suspected of murdering Andrew and has exhibited disturbing behavior while in prison, including threatening another inmate with a fork. While Kathleen and David harbored deep resentment toward Shirley for their son's murder, they worked hard to maintain their bond with Zachary. It became clear that Shirley was exploiting this situation. She began to abuse her freedom by frequently calling Andrew's parents at all hours, demanding financial support. They was forced to follow Shirley's lead, buying food and things for a woman who did not want to work and did nothing. She frequently brought up Andrew's death, a topic his parents wanted to avoid. Kathleen and David celebrated Zachary's birthday at McDonald's, where the boy ran to hug Grandma Kathleen, which angered Shirley. She yelled that she wouldn't let Zachary love them more than his mother. From that point on, Shirley began to make life difficult for them. It seemed she wasn't genuinely interested in keeping custody of the child. Instead, she wanted to cause pain for Andrew's parents. A hearing on extradition was scheduled for September 2003, which was to be the final one before Shirley would be sent to the U.S. During the waiting period for this process, Shirley started dating a new boyfriend, but he found out about her suspicious history and broke off the relationship. True to form, Shirley began stalking him, making threats and claiming she was pregnant. Despite her efforts to contact him and create drama, he ignored her. On August 17, she called a friend and mentioned that she planned to take Zachary to confront this man. Later, she stopped on the street to ask for directions, and that was the last time she and Zachary were seen alive. Shirley Turner and her young son, Zachary, vanished without a trace. That same day, a couple on vacation found the bodies of a woman and a small boy about 20 minutes from St. John's. Police quickly identified them as Shirley and Zachary. An autopsy revealed that Shirley had overdosed on anxiety medication prescribed to her. This same medication was also detected in a bottle of baby formula. A witness reported hearing a suspicious crying sound from a child near the beach around 2:30 a.m., but he could not locate the source. Forensic experts determined that, after mixing her over-the-counter medication into Zachary's infant formula and drink it herself, she tied Zachary to her chest with her sweater and jumped from a fishing pier at Foxtrap Marina into the ocean. Both died from drowning. Shirley's car was discovered near the home of the man she was supposed to meet that evening. She had left her photos with him and the child, along with a letter claiming he had convinced her to take her self-harm and harm the boy. However, the investigation revealed that this was a typical manipulative tactic for Shirley. She aimed to create trouble for the young man, who was unaware of her intentions. The investigators was also confirmed that she was not pregnant, which was another manipulation. The death of Zachary was devastating for Kathleen and David. They cremated him, just as they had done with Andrew, and scattered his ashes in the same location. David later confessed that he was so terrified for his grandson's safety and overwhelmed by the Canadian authorities that he fell into despair, so he contemplated harming Shirley. David wanted to take matters into his own hands and punish Shirley, who had shattered their family. He kept this plan from Kathleen and regretted not acting sooner, believing that if he had, Zachary would still be alive and they could care for him. Ultimately, he decided against this course of action, hoping that the final hearing would lead to Shirley's extradition to the U.S., where they could have more options and finally gain custody of Zachary, their only source of happiness. When they learned of Zachary's death, Kathleen and David were so heartbroken that they even considered ending their own lives. However, they ultimately chose to focus their energy on fighting for justice to ensure that such a tragedy would not happen again. To reclaim justice, Kathleen and David appeared on television in the U.S. to share their story. They expressed their belief that the Canadian law enforcement system bore the most responsibility for the tragedy. Simultaneously, they initiated a campaign against the psychiatrist who facilitated Shirley's bail, which allowed her freedom during the investigation. His actions faced backlash, resulting in a $10,000 fine. Andrew's parents also criticized the judge who granted Shirley her release, enabling her to tragically take Zachary's life in October 2006. A over 500-page report by a child protection specialist was published, highlighting that Zachary's death could have been prevented. This report became a catalyst for reform in the Canadian judicial system. In October 2009, the Zachary Bill was introduced in the House of Commons, proposing significant amendments to the country's criminal laws. This legislation permitted judges to deny bail to individuals accused of serious crimes who attempted to evade justice, referencing the Shirley case. The case of Andrew and Zachary is not only a story of loss, but also of resilience and struggle. Andrew's parents, David and Kathleen Bagby, turned their unimaginable grief into a tireless campaign for change, shining a light on the flaws that allowed such a tragedy to happen. Their fight serves as a lasting testament to the love they had for their son and grandson, and a call to action for society to do better. While the pain of their loss remains, Andrew and Zachary's legacy is a powerful reminder of the importance of accountability, compassion, and vigilance. It is a story that continues to inspire efforts to ensure that such tragedies are prevented in the future, turning their memory into a beacon of hope for justice and reform.